"Sign these papers immediately," my father-in-law demanded, slapping a manila folder onto my glass desk with enough force to make my awards rattle. "This company needs Jonathan at the helm. He has the education and the pedigree to take it forward." I glanced at my husband Michael, who stood awkwardly by the door of my corner office, his eyes fixed on the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His silence was deafening. "With all due respect, Robert, I built Vertex Technologies from the ground up. We've grown 300% in 5 years under my leadership," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Elizabeth Winters Caldwell, my mother-in-law, gave that condescending laugh I'd grown to despise over the 7 years I'd been married to her son. "Oh, Rebecca, let's not pretend, shall we? Everyone knows your father handed you the initial capital. You're just a woman who got lucky with timing and market conditions. My Jonathan has an MBA from Wharton. He understands how real business works." Jonathan, my brother-in-law, smirked from behind his parents. He'd never worked a day in his life outside the family's social circles, yet somehow believed he deserved to have my company handed to him on a silver platter. I thought about my father, who had passed away just 8 months ago. He had been my mentor, my inspiration, and yes, my first investor, but not in the way they thought. "I'm not signing anything," I said firmly, sliding the folder back across the desk. Elizabeth's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched in surprise. "You ungrateful little," she began, her manicured fingers trembling with rage. "After everything we've done for you, we welcomed you into our family despite your background. This is how you repay us." By background, she meant growing up in a middle-class neighborhood with a single dad who worked 3 jobs to put me through college. The Caldwells had never let me forget I wasn't born into their elite social circle. "Rebecca," Michael finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we should discuss this at home, as a family." "No, Michael," Robert interrupted, his imposing figure casting a shadow across my awards wall. "Your wife needs to understand how things work in our family. Either she signs these transfer papers or we'll make sure everyone knows how she really got her start." "What exactly are you implying?" I asked, although I already knew. "Don't play naive," Elizabeth snapped. "The initial funding, the connections to your biggest clients, they all came through our family networks. Where do you think your top 5 clients were referred from? Our country club connections, that's where." I had to suppress a smile. If only they knew the truth about those clients and how they'd actually come on board. Just then, my office phone buzzed. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Donovan is here to see you. He says it's urgent." "Perfect timing," I replied. "Send him in." The door opened, and in walked Thomas Donovan, my father's attorney of 30 years. He carried a sleek black briefcase and wore the serious expression I'd come to associate with legal matters of great importance. "Ms. Chen, I apologize for interrupting, but it's time," he said with a nod. "Time for what?" Robert demanded, his face reddening. "The execution of Harold Chen's protocol," Thomas replied calmly, placing his briefcase on my conference table. "The 8-month marker has been reached." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What protocol? What are you talking about?" I stood smoothing my skirt as I moved toward the conference area of my office. "You see, my father had a specific set of instructions, a legacy protocol, if you will, that was to be activated exactly 8 months after his death." "This is ridiculous," Jonathan sputtered. "We're in the middle of an important family business discussion." "Oh, you definitely want to hear this," I assured him with a smile. "It's very much about business." As Thomas opened his briefcase and removed a sealed envelope, I watched the color gradually drain from all 3 Caldwell's faces. Michael moved closer to me, confusion evident in his expression. "Rebecca, what's going on?" he whispered. Before I could answer, Thomas began speaking. "I, Harold Chen, being of sound mind and body, hereby activate the legacy protocol, effective 8 months after my death, as witnessed and executed by my attorney, Thomas Donovan." Elizabeth interrupted, her voice shrill. "What is this, some kind of dramatic reading? We don't have time for." "Mrs. Caldwell," Thomas said firmly, "I suggest you listen carefully, as this directly affects your family's standing. The first revelation," Thomas continued, "concerns the true ownership of Vertex Technologies." Robert laughed dismissively. "We know all about that. Harold provided the seed money for his daughter's little venture." Thomas removed a document from his briefcase. Actually, Mr. Caldwell, Harold Chen never provided direct capital to Vertex Technologies. In fact, Rebecca secured her initial funding through the Women Entrepreneurs Grant Program. Followed by angel investors, she personally pitched to over 18 months. I remembered those days, the endless pitches, the rejections, the late nights perfecting my business plan. My father had insisted I secure funding on my own merit, saying that true respect comes only from what you build yourself. That's absurd, Elizabeth hissed. Everyone knows. What everyone knows is what you've been telling them, Elizabeth, I interjected. But the financial records don't lie. Thomas pulled out another document. The second revelation concerns Caldwell Industries. At this, Robert's face went completely white. What about Caldwell Industries? That's my company. It has nothing to do with Harold or this protocol. On the contrary, Thomas replied, per these documents, Harold Chen has been the majority shareholder of Caldwell Industries for the past 12 years, holding 58% of all voting shares through a series of shell companies and trusts. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the ambient noise of the city 30 floors below seemed to fade away. That's impossible, Robert finally whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. In 2011, when Caldwell Industries was on the verge of bankruptcy due to the failed European expansion, Harold Chen purchased controlling interest through his investment firm, Chen Global Holdings. He kept his ownership quiet at your specific request, Robert, to preserve your family's reputation. Michael turned to his father, shock evident on his face. Dad, is this true? Were we really almost bankrupt? Robert couldn't meet his son's eyes. There were financial difficulties, but Harold had no right to. He had every right, Thomas interrupted, displaying contracts with Robert's signature clearly visible. These were legally executed agreements. Harold saved your company and your family's legacy. Elizabeth sank into a chair, her perfect posture crumbling along with her composure. Why would he do this? Why reveal it now? Thomas pulled out a sealed envelope. This letter from Harold explains everything. He asked that I read it aloud in this exact circumstance. The letter began. Asterisk to the Caldwell family, asterisk. Asterisk, if you're hearing this letter, it means two things. First, that I have passed on from this world, and second, that you have attempted to force my daughter to relinquish control of the company she built through her own brilliance and determination, asterisk. Asterisk, I have watched for years as you belittled her achievements, dismissed her intelligence, and treated her as an outsider despite her marriage into your family. I had hoped that over time, you would recognize her extraordinary talent and welcome her truly as one of your own. That has not happened, asterisk. Asterisk, what you didn't know is that while Rebecca was building Vertex Technologies without my financial assistance, I was quietly becoming the majority owner of Caldwell Industries, saving it from the catastrophic decisions made by Robert between 2009 and 2011, asterisk. Asterisk, the prestigious clients you claim to have provided to Vertex came to Rebecca's company not because of your country club connections, but because I directed my business interests to support her only after she had proven her concept and secured independent funding. They stayed because of the superior service and innovation Vertex provided under her leadership, asterisk. Asterisk, as of today, control of my shares in Caldwell Industries transfers to my daughter, Rebecca Chen Caldwell, giving her effective control of both Vertex Technologies and Caldwell Industries, asterisk. Asterisk, Robert, you built a good company once, but your pride and prejudice have clouded your judgment. Elizabeth, your social standing has always been more important to you than genuine human connection. And Jonathan, you have relied on your family name rather than developing your own skills and work ethic, asterisk. Asterisk, Michael, my son-in-law, I have always appreciated your kindness, though I had hoped you would find the courage to stand up for your wife more forcefully against your family's mistreatment, asterisk. Asterisk, Rebecca, my daughter, this is my final gift to you, not money or power, but the truth. What you do with it is entirely your decision. Asterisk. As Thomas finished reading, Jonathan stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Elizabeth remained seated, staring blankly ahead as though her entire world had collapsed. And perhaps it had. Robert stood rigidly, his face a mask of controlled fury. This is corporate theft. We'll fight this in court. Thomas smiled for the first time. You're welcome to try, Mr. Caldwell. However, Every transaction was meticulously documented and legally executed. Additionally, I have here evidence of several questionable financial maneuvers executed by Jonathan through Caldwell Industries accounts over the past 3 years. Luxury expenses disguised as business costs, offshore transfers, tax avoidance schemes. Robert paled further. Those were authorized. Perhaps, Thomas conceded, but I doubt the SEC or IRS would agree with the accounting methods used. Michael moved to my side, taking my hand. Rebecca, did you know about all this? I squeezed his hand gently. I found out about my father's ownership of Caldwell Industries the day after he died. He left me a private letter explaining everything, but asked me to wait for this moment to give your family a chance to show their true colors without interference. I turned to Robert and Elizabeth. I'm offering you a choice. Option 1. You acknowledge the change in ownership, maintain your current positions at reduced authority, and we never publicly reveal what almost happened to Caldwell Industries 12 years ago. And option 2. Elizabeth asked, her voice hollow. I announce my father's long-standing ownership, reveal the near bankruptcy, replace the entire executive team, and let Jonathan face investigation for his creative accounting practices. The choice wasn't really a choice at all, and they knew it. What happens now? Michael asked as his parents left my office in defeat. I looked at the photograph of my father I kept on my desk. His kind eyes seemed to twinkle with pride even from the frame. Now we rebuild, I said, taking his hand. Not just the business, but our family, one based on respect and truth rather than power and pretense. I'm sorry, Michael said quietly, for not standing up to them sooner, for not seeing what was happening. You're standing with me now, I replied. That's what matters. The next morning, as I prepared to address the combined executive teams of both companies, I thought about my father's words. True respect comes only from what you build yourself. He had given me the opportunity to build something far more valuable than a business empire, a legacy of integrity, strength, and truth. As I walked into the boardroom filled with uncertain faces, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would prove that the most powerful inheritance isn't money or shares or social standing, but the courage to stand up for what you've built and the wisdom to know what truly matters. Robert and Elizabeth eventually retired to their beach house, telling anyone who would listen that they'd chosen to step back to focus on family. Jonathan took a position at a firm across the country, humbled by his fall from grace. Michael found his voice and his purpose, starting a foundation to help first-generation entrepreneurs secure funding. And me? I keep my father's photo on my desk, a reminder that sometimes the greatest gift isn't what you're given, but what you earn through your own merit and determination. Last month, as I sat in my office, once my father's secret office at Caldwell Industries, my daughter Lily came to visit after school. At 9 years old, she already shows the same determination I had. Mom, she asked, looking around the expansive office, will I run these companies someday? I smiled, thinking of my father's wisdom. That's entirely up to you, sweetheart. You can run these companies, start your own, or do something completely different. The most important thing is that whatever you choose, you build it yourself, with integrity and courage. She nodded seriously, then broke into a grin. Like you did. Yes, I said, hugging her close. Exactly like that.
I trace my fingertips along the cool, smooth granite of my kitchen countertop, a choice I made after meticulously comparing a dozen samples. Sunlight floods in through the windows I cleaned twice today, casting warm, golden squares onto the new hardwood floors of my apartment, my personal triumph, with my name alone on the deed. The doorbell rings, sparking a wave of nervous anticipation. They've arrived. I smooth down my blouse and open the door, only to be met with my mother's discerning eyes as she surveys the entryway. Emma, darling, she murmurs, air kissing near my cheek, her expensive perfume invading my space. She glances around, her eyes critical of the simple decor. Couldn't you have hired an interior designer like Violet's? She questions. This place could use more character. Behind her, my father steps in, already buried in his phone. Traffic was awful. Is there parking validation? He asks. Violet, last to enter, with designer sunglasses atop her head and phone in hand, gives my apartment a quick look. It's cute. Smaller than I expected, she comments. It's 2 bedrooms, I respond, trying to keep my tone even, as I suppress the need to defend my choices. I led them on a guided tour of my space, showing off the elements I worked extra hours to afford. The south-facing windows offer natural light all day, and I managed a great deal on the upgraded appliances, I point out, pride evident in my voice. Dad nods absently, still engrossed in his emails. Violet interrupts. Did you see my latest post? It got 5,000 likes. She shows her phone to our parents, and the Action Insight company wants to renew her influencer contract. My parents crowd around her, excited. Show us. Mom exclaims. Your social media is taking off. That's my girl. Dad beams, suddenly attentive. Feeling sidelined, I lean against my carefully chosen kitchen backsplash. I got promoted to senior manager last week, I mentioned during a brief pause. 3 years instead of the usual 7. That's nice, dear, Mom responds, not even looking up as she discusses Violet's latest influencer deal. A memory hits me. I was 13, saving every dollar of my allowance for months, while Violet squandered hers on mall trips. When I finally bought the laptop I needed for school, I showed it to my parents, proud. That's a lot of hard work, Dad had said, distractedly. That same night, Violet came home with new designer jeans Mom had bought her, just because. History repeats itself with different milestones. My full scholarship met with lukewarm reactions at dinner, overshadowed by Violet's minimal-effort graduation, which sparked a lavish party. Anyone want coffee? I ask, snapping back to the present. I offer the special blend from the local roaster, but no response comes. They've all moved to my small balcony, where Violet is taking selfies, positioning herself to capture the city view. This would make such a cute background for my wellness series, she says, planning to edit out the undesirable elements. My parents nod, as if she's unveiled a hidden gem. After they leave early for another of Violet's engagements, I stand in the quiet of my apartment, the victory feeling somewhat hollow. Weeks later, I'm at the dealership, signing the paperwork for my new, not brand new, SUV, 4 years of savings while driving a car held together by hope and duct tape. Congratulations, Miss Wilson. She's all yours, the salesman says, handing me the keys. Pride fills me as I caress the sleek, silver exterior. I earned this through countless early mornings and late nights. When my family comes over for Sunday dinner, I park the SUV prominently in the driveway. Nice car, Dad comments briefly. It's the mid-range model, I explain. Good safety ratings, and I negotiated them down $4,100. Violet circles it, her face unimpressed. Why work so hard when you could just... But her words trail off, and I don't need to hear the rest. I know my achievements might never shine as brightly in their eyes as Violet's do, but they are mine, crafted from dedication and perseverance. I smile to myself, satisfied in my quiet triumphs, knowing the worth of every effort I've made. I'll marry rich and have everything given to me, Violet jokes, making our parents laugh as if she's made a clever comment. That's our Violet, always planning, Mom says, hugging her arm warmly. I stand by my car, gripping my keys tightly and forcing a smile. Like always, my achievements fade into the background of Violet's spotlight. I follow them inside, feeling the familiar weight of being seen as second best. What they don't realize is the determination growing within me. They don't know that one day, their pushing will go too far, and they'll see what I'm really capable of. In a tight dressing room, I watch Violet spin in her $31,000 wedding dress, the silk whispering like cash, diamonds sparkling at her neck. Perfect, Mom sighs, her eyes shining. Absolutely perfect. I adjust the bridesmaid dress they picked for me. Its color dulls my complexion, and the fit is nothing for my shape. The cost alone could cover my monthly mortgage. Lucas's family knows everyone, Violet says, admiring her reflection. This wedding will be in 5 magazines. Mom adjusts Violet's train for dramatic effect. Our daughter has made it, she declares. I catch Mom's eye in the mirror as she looks at me. This is what real success looks like, Emma, she says sweetly, though her eyes are sharp. Not everyone gets the value of the right connections. I bite my tongue hard, tasting blood. Across the room, Lucas's mother and sister share a look of polite concern. They see what my parents won't acknowledge. When Violet's honeymoon photos from the Maldives flood my Instagram, I'm receiving my promotion email. "Congratulations, Director of Marketing," it announces. I sip wine and update my investment spreadsheet with my new salary. The figures grow steadily. Unspectacular, but solid. Driving to my parents for Sunday dinner, Violet's new sports car takes pride of place in the driveway. Inside, she's on the sofa, phone in hand. "Just ordered an amazing Hermes bag," she says, not even looking up. Lucas got his bonus early. I place my homemade lasagna on the table. "That's nice. I've just been promoted to director," I tell them. Dad looks up briefly. "Good for you, kiddo. Violet, show us that bag you're getting." Years later, I got a call from Mom, crying. "He left her," she sobs. "Called her shallow and wasteful. Can you believe it, after all she did for him?" She tells me Lucas packed up and said he couldn't handle her endless spending and that she never understood the value of money or commitment. She tried to justify her desires, but he just left. I look at my expense tracker. Years of careful planning in neat rows. The divorce cites irreconcilable differences and financial recklessness. His lawyer's going after the prenup hard. "She's getting almost nothing," Mom says bitterly. "Emma, where's she staying?" I ask, though I already know. "Here, of course," Mom replies as if it's obvious. "We've kept her room just as she left it. She needs us now." As I open the email for the third time, my hands shook. "Congratulations, Emma Wilson. You're the winner of our European Dream Vacation Contest. Your entry with innovative marketing strategies has earned you a $20,000 all-expenses-paid trip across 7 European countries for 3 weeks." I couldn't wait to share the news, so I called my parents, bubbling with excitement. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe it. I won a European vacation worth $20,000. Before I could continue, my mom cut in, using that tone reserved for explaining complex matters to a child. "Sweetie, you should consider giving the trip to Violet. She needs something positive right now." Stunned, I replied, "The prize isn't transferable. It's a reward for my professional work." "But your sister has been through so much with her divorce," my dad added. "A trip could help her." "It's a professional achievement award. It's not about who needs it more," I insisted, but my mom pressed on, saying I was being selfish. Feeling that old, familiar pressure to yield, something within me snapped. "No," I said firmly. The other end of the phone went silent. When my mom finally spoke, her disappointment was palpable. My dad then expressed his disappointment too, asking what they had done to deserve such selfishness from me. "When have you ever celebrated my successes like you do Violet's?" I retorted. As the conversation escalated, Violet arrived, overhearing part of our discussion. She accused me of always having it easy. "I've earned my way, just like I earned this trip," I countered calmly. "We raised you to value family," my dad lamented. "I do, but I also value myself," I replied. After hanging up, I stood in my kitchen, feeling a new sense of resolve. For the first time, I recognized someone strong in my reflection. I booked my flight that night. In Europe, I soaked in the Tuscan sun and explored ancient landscapes, feeling an unfamiliar sense of peace. There, nobody knew or cared about my perpetual runner-up status or family dynamics. I captured beautiful scenes, enjoying my solitude and the freedom from comparisons. Upon returning, I found my apartment altered with Violet's presence. She had moved in using a key given by our parents without my consent. When confronted, both she and our parents brushed off my concerns. As I stood in my own space, now invaded, I realized the trip had changed more than just my location. It had transformed my outlook. Here was to building a life truly my own. As I read the email for the third time, my hands started to shake with excitement. It's real. "Congratulations, Emma Wilson. You've won our European Dream Vacation Contest." The email details a trip worth $20,000, covering 3 weeks in 7 European countries. Filled with joy, I call my parents, eager to share my incredible news. Mom, Dad, I won a $20,000 trip to Europe. Before I can finish, Mom cuts in with her, explaining to a child voice, Sweetie, you should give that trip to Violet. She needs it right now. Stunned, I hear Dad agree. Violet's had a tough time, Emma. She needs this more than you. It's not transferable. I respond quickly, though I haven't checked. It's an award for my work. You could figure something out, Mom presses. Violet needs it more. That familiar pressure to step aside lands on me, but something inside me pushes back this time. No, I say firmly. Excuse me? Mom sounds shocked. No, I repeat. I earned this. I'm going. Dad's voice gets stern. We're disappointed, Emma. After all, we've done. What exactly have you done? I blurt out. When have you ever celebrated my achievements like you do Violet's mere existence? Violet's voice suddenly cuts in, asking what's happening. Mom explains loudly. Emma won a trip and won't give it to Violet. Violet's indignant. Are you serious? You've always had it easy. I earned those things, I find myself saying calmly. Just like I earned this trip. We raised you to put family first, Dad says, disappointment heavy in his voice. I do care about family, I reply. But I also care about myself. I end the call, my resolve firming as I stand in my kitchen, feeling empowered for the first time. Weeks later, I returned from Europe to find my apartment altered. My stuff is moved around, family photos and books are displaced, and Violet's organic foods fill my cabinets. Panicking, I rush to check my car, but my parking spot is empty. I call my parents frantically. Where is my car? I demand. Calm down, Emma. Dad uses his patronizing tone. We sold it. Violet needed money. You sold my car? I'm incredulous. It was mine. It was just a car, Emma. Family comes first. Mom chimes in. It was my car. My name was on the title. I argue. We'll talk when you've calmed down, Dad says, ending the call. I return to my apartment, furious. Violet lounges on my couch, scrolling her phone. Where's the money for my car? I demand. I needed things, she says casually, not looking up. I notice a bank statement on the counter showing $31,000 withdrawal receipts from designer boutiques and a new spa membership in Violet's name. I confront my parents as they walk in unannounced. You're being dramatic, Dad dismisses me. You stole from me, I say, calm but seething. You sold property that wasn't yours. Mom sighs. Family shares everything. Why are you so selfish? The word selfish, always used to control me, no longer affects me. Get out, I say firmly. All of you. Violet feigns outrage. After everything we've done for you? You've done nothing but take. I cut off Dad's protests. Get out of my apartment. Leave the key. Mom tries to manipulate one last time. We're your family, Emma. Not anymore, I say, meeting her eyes unflinchingly. When the door closes, I lock it with a sense of finality and relief. I later meet with my attorney, Miss Sophie, handing over a folder of evidence. They sold my car without permission. It was registered in my name. She's impressed by my meticulous records. Most people don't bring this much evidence. I say nothing. My thorough preparations have always been my shield. She confirms, this is straightforward theft. I instruct her to document everything. The tremor that used to underline my words is gone. I'm no longer the overshadowed sister. I'm standing up for myself, ready to fight back. My hands were steady as I added another piece to my growing file of evidence. It included a printout of Violet's Instagram post from 5 days after they sold my car. In it, she was lounging at a luxury spa, the caption exclaiming, "Self-care is investing in yourself. Hashtag healing, hashtag treat yourself, hashtag deserving." Next to that, I placed screenshots of text messages from my father. We did what was necessary for Violet. The car was just sitting there while you were traveling in Europe, he had written. My mother had chimed in. Family shares everything. You've always been too selfish with your things. The evidence was clear. documenting not only the unauthorized sale of my car, but also years of financial manipulation, emergency funds diverted for Violet's extravagant birthday, and demands to use my apartment extending from weeks to months. I packed the folder carefully into my briefcase. Tomorrow, they would face the consequences. The sheriff arrived on time. I watched, arms crossed, as he knocked on my door. Violet, wearing my robe again, answered with a mix of annoyance and confusion. "Violet Wilson?" the sheriff asked. "Yes," she replied. "I'm serving you with an eviction notice. You have 76 hours to vacate these premises," he informed her. Violet's face was a mix of shock and anger as she read the document. She turned to me, fury in her eyes. "You wouldn't," she hissed. "I already have," I responded calmly. After the sheriff left, Violet confronted me. "You vindictive bitch. Mom and Dad they'll what? Sell another one of my things without permission? We're done with that." I cut her off. I picked up her designer purse from my coffee table and handed it to her. "You might want to start packing." 5 days later, I stood firm as Violet struggled with her overloaded suitcases. The sheriff, patient but firm, waited by the elevator. "Where am I supposed to go?" she demanded, her voice a blend of defiance and desperation. "That's not my problem," I replied, noticing the change in my voice. It was confident, unburdened. At the threshold, Violet paused, mascara streaking her face. "Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I stated. "I'm demanding respect." As she finally crossed the threshold, the sheriff escorted her to the elevator. I closed the door behind them, relishing the clean, untainted silence of my apartment. While the locksmith changed my locks, my father's voicemail played through the speaker. "You wouldn't sue your own family. We raised you, paid for your—" I stopped the recording, adding it to my evidence folder. The locksmith handed me the new keys, and the technician set up a security system that would alert my phone to any unauthorized entries. That night, I slept in my space, truly mine for the first time in weeks. The next meeting took place in the living room of the house I grew up in. My parents were visibly distressed, my mother clutching tissues, and my father angrily pacing. Beside me sat Miss Sophie, my attorney, her briefcase open and ready. "You have 2 options," I told them firmly. "Return $40,000 plus damages, or we go to court." "We don't have that kind of money," my mother sobbed, the tears that once could manipulate me now powerless. "This is extortion," my father exclaimed. "This is justice," Miss Sophie corrected him, her voice cool and professional. "Your parents, yes," I said, looking around the once familiar space. "But parents shouldn't steal from their children." "Where are we supposed to get $30,000? My father demanded. "Then you'll need to sell the house," I said, unmoved. "You have 30 days to make arrangements." My father's face paled. "Emma," he began, his voice softening to that old cajoling tone. "Sweetheart, let's work something out as a family." But I was done negotiating. We had already tried to handle things as a family. I shut my legal documents as we left the meeting, not looking back. The familiar weight on my shoulders felt lighter with each step I took. Was it really revenge when all I wanted was justice? This question followed me to the car, where I finally let myself smile a little. They never expected me to fight back, but they were about to learn what years of being overlooked and stolen from had built, a formidable opponent. I straightened my navy blazer and checked my reflection in the courthouse bathroom mirror. My hands were steady, a stark contrast to the shaking I experienced the day I found Violet in my apartment. The woman in the mirror now stood taller and more confident than she had just 2 months ago. Stepping out into the marble hallway of the courthouse, I heard the click of my heels echo against the stone. My lawyer was waiting, briefcase in hand. At the far end of the corridor, I saw them. My parents looking weary and Violet, detached, scrolling on her phone as if none of this really mattered. My mom rushed towards me, her perfume invading my space as she tried to embrace me. "Emma, sweetheart, we can still fix this as a family," she pleaded. "This isn't who we raised you to be," my dad added quietly, his voice full of worry about our family's reputation and my mother's health. For a moment, the old pressures tried to grip me, and I felt like I was 12 again, my achievements always overshadowed by Violet's needs. Violet pocketed her phone and snapped, "You're destroying our family over a stupid car." But the clarity in my mind was sharp. "This stopped being about the car the moment you felt entitled to take what wasn't yours," I replied calmly. "This is about 31 years of you taking without asking." We entered the courtroom. My lawyer began the presentation, displaying a text message from my dad on the screen. "We sold your car. Violet needed the money more." The casual confession of theft was stark against the white wall. As my lawyer clicked through evidence, bank statements showing the $31,000 withdrawal the day after they sold my car, Violet's social media posts flaunting her purchases, the judge's expression turned grave. I watched my parents squirm, their lawyers' weak attempts at explaining the situation as family misunderstandings crumbling under the solid wall of my evidence. When the judge spoke, his voice was clear and firm. "This is a clear case of unauthorized sale of property and financial exploitation," he stated, removing his glasses and looking directly at my parents. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff." The room was heavy with the significance of his words. The defendants are ordered to pay $40,000 for the value of the vehicle, plus $9,000 in damages and all legal fees. I heard my father's sharp breath. My mother whispered urgently to him, "We'll lose the house," loud enough for others to hear in the silent courtroom. As the judge continued, the reality of their situation settled around us, a stark reminder of the consequences of their actions. As I drive past my childhood home, I see the "for sale" sign swinging in the spring breeze. A moving truck is parked in the driveway, its doors open wide, ready to take away the remnants of my past. Through the open garage, I catch a glimpse of Violet carrying a box to her car, her face showing a strain of unfamiliar reality. For the first time, she's facing consequences that can't be ignored or shifted onto someone else. I don't stop, I don't even slow down. My new SUV, nicer than the one they sold from under me, carries me forward, away from their shrinking lives into a smaller, two-bedroom apartment across town. The irony isn't lost on me. My once-dismissed two-bedroom apartment is now reflected in their downsized reality. Back in my apartment, the space feels different because I am different. The court judgment, an official recognition of my rights, lies on my countertop. I consider framing it as a trophy, but instead, I tuck it away in a drawer and softly close it. "This chapter is closed," I whisper to the empty room. I pick up my phone and scroll through my contacts. Mom, Dad, Violet. Names that once defined my worth are now just digital entries. I delete them, one by one, feeling the weight lift with each tap. I breathe deeply, not the shallow breaths of someone bracing for disappointment, but the full, lung-expanding breaths of someone facing a new beginning. Outside, the city pulses with life. Inside, the only sound is my steady, free breathing. I trace my fingers over the engraved nameplate on my office door. Director of Marketing, Emma Wilson. It feels cool and solid, just like the foundation I've built for myself. Years ago, I fought for recognition in a family that overlooked me. Now, executives seek my advice across conference tables. "Emma, do you have a minute?" Madison asks, peeking into my office with a troubled look about tomorrow's presentation. "Come in," I gesture, helping her through her concerns. Afterward, I finalize the papers for my new beach house investment, a decision made after careful research and planning. "Congratulations, Miss Wilson. It's rare to see someone your age making such sound investments," the realtor comments. I smile, knowing the depth of what each signature represents, not just financial acumen, but a hard-won freedom. That evening, laughter fills my apartment. Friends gather around my dining table, their wine glasses catching the warm light. They celebrate my successes genuinely, interested in my dreams without shifting focus. To Emma, Thomas toasts, who taught us all what real strength looks like. Their glasses clink against mine, and a genuine warmth spreads through me. Later, at my favorite restaurant, I'm enjoying my meal when I notice my family entering. They seem smaller, diminished. Violet sees me first, pausing before schooling her expression. Our eyes meet briefly, once a source of anxiety, Now just a calm, detached observation, like watching strangers in a scene. The change in me is profound. I'm no longer the person they once knew, bound by their expectations and judgments. I am truly free. I relished each bite of my dinner across from them in the restaurant. Later, driving my new $55,000 SUV along the coastal road, the breeze played with my hair. This car was a significant improvement over what they had taken from me. On the dashboard, a framed photo from my solo trip to Europe showed me on a hill, arms wide, facing the sunshine. A reminder that some costs are justified for tranquility. Sarah, the newest and most talented member of my team, shared her troubles in a shaky voice. My parents expect me to keep funding my brother, even though he squanders it all on gambling. Family doesn't guarantee loyalty, I responded, reflecting on my past. Respect needs to be earned, even from those closest to us. Her eyes widened a bit at my candidness. Being self-sufficient is the greatest accomplishment, I added, and setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's crucial for survival. That night, I spread out brochures for solo trips to Greece, New Zealand, and Morocco on my coffee table. They called to me, a woman who no longer dreaded solitude. My growing investment portfolio and kitchen renovation plans, featuring the backsplash I'd always wanted, lay beside them. I then opened my journal, a practice I've kept since I started over, and wrote, "I will choose a family worthy of me." Each word was a step away from my old self, the one who sought validation from others. The apartment was silent, save for the scratching of my pen on paper. Yet this silence wasn't empty anymore. It was profoundly mine.
"Enjoy your hike, darling," my husband Victor called out mockingly. From the luxury SUV's driver's seat, his family erupting into cruel laughter behind him. I stood frozen in disbelief, one hand instinctively protecting my 8-month pregnant belly. As their vehicle disappeared down the winding mountain road, the Colorado summer sun beat mercilessly against my skin while my heart pounded in my chest. I watched in shock as they abandoned me on this remote hiking trail, continuing toward their mountain resort without a second thought. My name is Eliza Mitchell, and until that moment, I thought I understood what betrayal meant. But watching my husband of 3 years deliberately abandon his high-risk pregnant wife on a remote mountain trail, that was a level of calculated cruelty that sent ice through my veins. His mother Marilyn and sister Rebecca were clearly visible in the back seat, their perfectly made-up faces contorted with smirking satisfaction as they drove away. What had started as a supposed medical charity promotional video shoot at this exclusive mountain resort had been nothing but an elaborate setup. I'd reluctantly agreed to separate from the group for what Victor called the perfect backdrop shot for his mother's foundation. Despite feeling increasingly uneasy as we climbed higher up the trail. "We need your expertise as a pediatric medical therapist on camera," Marilyn had insisted earlier, her voice honeyed with false sincerity. The donors love seeing real medical professionals caring for children. When they finally stopped at this scenic overlook, I'd asked Victor to wait nearby, while I used the portable restroom, my swollen ankles and aching back screaming in protest after the long uphill walk. When I emerged just minutes later, I saw them all watching me through the car windows, laughing and pointing as if I were some kind of spectacle. Before I could reach them, Victor deliberately accelerated away, leaving me stranded at nearly 9,000 feet elevation, with no phone, no water, and no way down the mountain. Lawrence Turner, owner of the resort's exclusive mountaintop restaurant just a quarter mile further up the trail, had witnessed the entire cruel scene unfold from his terrace. He immediately rushed down to help me, his weathered face tight with concern. "We have security cameras covering the entire property," he said, his voice trembling with barely contained fury as he gently guided me up to his restaurant. "What they did to you, it's beyond contemptible." I collapsed into a chair in his private office, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I tried to process the calculated betrayal. My phone, medical emergency bag, purse, everything was in Victor's car. I was stranded with nothing but the light hiking clothes I was wearing, miles from civilization. Grace Turner, Lawrence's wife and a former nurse, rushed over with water and a protein bar. Her experienced eyes quickly assessing my condition. "You don't look so good," she murmured, pressing a cool cloth to my forehead. "How far along are you?" 8 months, I whispered, feeling my baby girl kick anxiously inside me. High-risk pregnancy. My medical kit with all my information is in the car. "I'm calling the resort's emergency medical team right now," Lawrence declared, reaching for his satellite phone. "And then I'm contacting every media outlet I know. The world needs to see this. What kind of monster abandons his pregnant wife in the mountains? And his family laughing about it? This goes beyond cruelty, it's dangerous." I should have felt humiliated or tried to quiet him. Instead, an eerie calm washed over me, pushing aside the panic. Let them call the media. Let the world see exactly who Victor Patterson and his prestigious family truly were. As I gently rubbed my swollen belly, feeling my daughter's frantic movements gradually calm under my touch, I knew with absolute certainty this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about protecting my child from a family that treated human life as disposable entertainment. Looking back through the haze of shock, there had been countless warning signs about Victor and his family from the beginning. When we first met at a pediatric cancer fundraiser 3 years ago, Victor had seemed so different from his family, compassionate, genuine, and deeply moved by the children's stories I shared as their medical therapist. He was a vice president at Sentinel Investment Banking's healthcare division, handling billions in medical industry investments. I was a pediatric medical therapist who had dedicated my life to helping children with cancer through specialized physical and emotional therapy techniques. We fell in love quickly, or so I thought, and despite his family's thinly veiled disapproval, married within a year. Marilyn, my mother-in-law, ran the prestigious Patterson Medical Foundation, which organized lavish charity galas allegedly supporting children's hospitals. She never let a conversation pass without subtly reminding me that I was beneath their social standing. "It's admirable that you work directly with sick children," she would say, examining me over her champagne glass, her voice dripping with condescension. Though I always hoped Victor would marry someone with an MD after their name. At least a surgeon, or perhaps a specialist. Rebecca, Victor's sister, was infinitely worse. As a fashion magazine's medical features editor, she orchestrated countless social ambushes designed to humiliate me. Like the time she invited me to what she called a casual coffee with some friends. That turned out to be a formal medical foundation board meeting filled with chief surgeons and hospital directors. "Oh, I must have forgotten to mention it was a board meeting," she'd said with a practiced smile as I stood there in casual clothes among a sea of designer suits. "But surely you have something interesting to contribute. After all, you do, what exactly? Play with the sick children?" Victor had defended me initially, seeming genuinely angry at his family's treatment. That changed dramatically when I became pregnant after 2 years of trying. It was as if someone had flipped a switch inside him. Suddenly he began echoing his mother's criticisms, laughing at his sister's cruel jokes, and treating my work with children as embarrassing rather than meaningful. Lawrence's voice pulled me back to the terrifying present. "The resort's emergency medical team will be here in 15 minutes. He said, checking his watch. "And I've already sent the security footage to my contact at Denver Medical News. The cameras caught everything, including their conversation before you came out." Grace pressed a warm mug of honey-sweetened tea into my trembling hands. "You're still shaking, dear. When was the last time you ate something substantial?" I realized I'd completely missed lunch, caught up in the stress of the promotional video preparations, the trip that Victor had insisted would be our final vacation before the baby arrived. He had demanded his family join us, insisting it would be wonderful for our foundation's image. I should have realized something was wrong when he made me sit in the back seat on the drive up so Marilyn could sit up front, I admitted quietly, my voice catching. He claimed it was because she gets car sickness on mountain roads. But they were whispering and exchanging looks the entire time. Grace's face hardened, maternal protectiveness flashing in her eyes. Well, they won't be smirking when the world sees what they've done. Lawrence's niece is a producer at Medical Ethics Today. Trust me, this story will reach every medical professional in the country by tomorrow. While waiting for the medical team, I borrowed Lawrence's satellite phone to call my best friend Jasmine. As a pediatric oncologist who had worked alongside me for years, she had never trusted Victor or his family, particularly after what happened at the medical charity gala last month. Eliza. Thank God you're all right. Jasmine answered, panic evident in her voice. You need to see what they're posting on social media right now. Lawrence turned his tablet toward me, pulling up Instagram. There on Victor's verified page was a series of photos posted just 15 minutes ago. My hands trembled violently as I read the caption, finally enjoying some quality family time at Alpine Heights Resort. Some people simply can't handle the Patterson lifestyle. Hashtag mountain luxury, hashtag family legacy. The photos showed Victor, Marilyn, and Rebecca lounging by the resort's exclusive infinity pool. Expensive champagne in hand, acting as if they hadn't just committed a potentially criminal act. Comments from their social circle flooded in, congratulating them on their well-deserved relaxation and a freedom. There's more, Jasmine said grimly. Marilyn's foundation just announced a major fundraiser for a maternal health care in crisis next week. The hypocrisy is staggering. Lawrence's security footage was playing on his other monitor. I watched myself emerging from the restroom, my pregnant belly clearly visible, as Victor's SUV deliberately accelerated away. The audio captured their cruel laughter with perfect clarity. Those aren't human beings, Grace whispered, watching the footage with tears in her eyes. They're soulless monsters. My medical emergency bag was still in the car, along with my phone, the bag containing all my high-risk pregnancy information, emergency medications, and the specialized monitor for tracking the baby's movements. The full enormity of their cruelty hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't merely abandoned me, they had knowingly endangered my baby's life. A sharp, searing pain suddenly radiated across my abdomen. Grace noticed immediately and grabbed my hand. Eliza, are you having contractions? Her professional nurse's demeanor instantly returned. Just Braxton Hicks, I tried to reassure her, but another wave of pain made me gasp and double over. At least I thought they were. Lawrence was already on the satellite phone with the resort's medical director. We need that team here now, he said firmly. Possible premature labor. High-risk pregnancy. 32 weeks. No medical history available. As if orchestrated by fate, a medical news cruise helicopter landed on the restaurant's private pad. The reporter, a woman named Olivia Morales known for her investigative medical journalism, took one look at my condition and made an immediate decision. We're transporting you to the University Medical Center now, she said with calm authority. We can do the interview later if you're willing. This story isn't just about abandonment anymore, it's about deliberately endangering a high-risk pregnancy and unborn child. As the medical team helped me into the helicopter, I glimpsed more media vehicles racing up the mountain road. My story had already caught the attention of major networks. My body shook as another contraction gripped me, this one unmistakably stronger than before. The specialists at UMC are the best in Colorado, Olivia reassured me, holding my hand firmly as we lifted off. And we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people the Pattersons truly are beneath their charitable facade. Looking down at the magnificent mountain landscape that had nearly become my prison, I realized with crystal clarity that this had become something far larger than just my personal trauma. Sometimes the darkest moments in our lives become catalysts for justice we never imagined possible. The University Medical Center's high-risk maternity unit transformed overnight into an unexpected command center for what was rapidly becoming a national news story. My contractions had finally subsided, false labor triggered by extreme stress and altitude exposure, the specialists explained, but they insisted on keeping me For 48 hours of close monitoring. By evening, the security footage from the mountain resort had spread across every major news network in the country. My heart raced every time I saw the clip replayed. The raw betrayal still fresh and painful. Mrs. Patterson, a nurse said, knocking gently before entering my room. There are additional medical journalists requesting interviews. Should I tell them you're resting? I was contemplating my answer when my phone buzzed loudly beside me. Jasmine had recovered it from the resort where Victor and his family were staying. An empathetic staff member had found it abandoned in their suite and, after seeing the breaking news, had reached out through the hospital. Eliza, quick, turn on Med News Network. Jasmine urged, her voice tight with urgency. They're interviewing Marilyn live from the resort spa. The nurse quickly helped me find the channel. There was my mother-in-law, immaculately styled in designer resort loungewear, attempting to control the narrative with practiced precision. This entire situation has been grossly misrepresented, Marilyn declared with rehearsed compassion to the reporter. Eliza has been struggling emotionally throughout this pregnancy, hormonal imbalances. You understand. She specifically requested some private time for meditation on the mountain trail, and we simply honored her wishes. The reporter's expression hardened visibly. Mrs. Patterson, we have multiple camera angles showing your son and family laughing. As you abandoned a medical professional who is 8 months pregnant, with a documented high-risk pregnancy on a remote mountain trail with no phone, no medical supplies, and no water, at an elevation known to trigger premature labor. How do you explain that? Marilyn's perfectly composed facade cracked momentarily. Those recordings must be missing context. Our medical foundation has always championed maternal healthcare excellence. The broadcast cut abruptly to the resort's crystal-clear security footage showing their SUV accelerating away while I struggled toward them. The audio picked up Victor's mocking voice with perfect clarity. Enjoy your hike, darling. My phone erupted with notifications. The Patterson Medical Foundation's social platforms were being inundated with outraged comments from medical professionals worldwide. Their major hospital partners were publicly suspending affiliations. Sentinel Investment Banking's healthcare division was trending across all platforms, with medical ethics organizations demanding accountability. Your experience has ignited something profound, Olivia Morales said, entering my room with her producer. The medical community is collectively furious. Would you consider making a formal statement? I thought about Victor and his family, undoubtedly still enjoying the resort's luxury amenities, believing their connections would insulate them from consequences. I thought about other healthcare workers trapped in abusive relationships, with powerful partners who leveraged prestige against them. Yes, I said, adjusting myself in the hospital bed, my protective hands cradling my active baby bump. I need to speak about what happened. The interview flowed with raw authenticity. I detailed how Victor's behavior had transformed during my pregnancy, how his family had meticulously orchestrated this charity shoot to isolate and humiliate me. I described my specialized medical kit containing my high-risk pregnancy information and emergency medications that they'd deliberately taken away, demonstrating their complete disregard for my baby's safety. As a pediatric medical therapist, I've dedicated my life to protecting vulnerable children, I said, my voice strengthening. I never imagined I'd need to protect my own child from her father's family. As the interview aired, my phone flooded with messages of support. Victor's banking colleagues were publicly dissociating themselves. Sentinel's CEO had issued an emergency statement announcing they were deeply disturbed by the incident and launching an immediate ethics investigation. Mrs. Mitchell, Olivia said gently, using my professional name. Your story has resonated deeply within the medical community. Healthcare workers across the country are sharing similar experiences of being devalued and manipulated by wealthy partners or prestigious institutions. You've inadvertently started a movement about dignity in healthcare. I pressed my hand against my belly, feeling my daughter's determined kicks against my palm. I'm not sharing this for vengeance, I said directly to the camera, my voice steady despite my exhaustion. I'm doing this because no healthcare worker should face what I experienced today. And my daughter deserves to know that her mother stood firm against exploitation even when that exploitation came from her own family. By morning, the story had exploded beyond anything I could have anticipated. Lawrence Turner, the restaurant owner, appeared on a national healthcare policy program, sharing how his establishment's sophisticated security system had captured not just the abandonment but a chilling conversation before I'd emerged from the restroom. They meticulously planned this, Lawrence revealed to millions of stunned viewers. Our directional microphones clearly recorded Marilyn saying, "This will teach her to embarrass our foundation with her commoner's approach to medicine." They were actively laughing about abandoning a high-risk pregnant woman at dangerous altitude. What kind of monsters orchestrate something like that? Jasmine burst into my hospital room, her white doctor's coat flapping, as she clutched her tablet with trembling hands. "Eliza, this is explosive. Someone has leaked internal emails from Marilyn's foundation." She held the screen before me, displaying confidential communications from the Patterson Medical Foundation's executive board. The messages revealed a calculated campaign to isolate me from Victor, with Marilyn explicitly writing that a pediatric therapist who actually touches sick children isn't suitable for the Patterson medical legacy. The most devastating revelation came from Rebecca's messages to Victor. "Once the baby arrives, we'll have ample evidence to prove she's professionally compromised. Your position at Sentinel and Mother's connections with the hospital board will guarantee we secure full custody." I felt a chill run through me. This wasn't just about public humiliation, they had been methodically planning to take my child. Mrs. Mitchell, a distinguished man in an impeccable suit, appeared at my door, introducing himself as Dr. Alexander Reeves, Sentinel Investment Banking's Chief Medical Ethics Officer. "Might I speak with you privately?" After Jasmine stepped out, he addressed me directly. "We've terminated Victor's position, effective immediately. Our institution cannot maintain association with an executive who would knowingly endanger a high-risk pregnancy and systematically plot to separate a child from her mother, particularly a mother who serves our healthcare community." He handed me a sealed portfolio. These are documented exchanges from Victor's company communications, showing he misused corporate resources to research medical custody specialists focusing on maternal competency challenges. "We're submitting everything to your legal representation." My hands trembled visibly as I reviewed the materials. Victor had been meticulously constructing a case for months, documenting fabricated emotional instability incidents, planning to weaponize my dedication to my pediatric patients as evidence of maternal neglect. "I must share one additional concerning discovery," Dr. Reeves added, his expression gravely serious. "Our compliance department has uncovered that Victor has a pattern of devaluing female medical professionals throughout his investment portfolio. Several hospital administrators and research scientists have now stepped forward with complaints they previously feared would damage their institution's funding. This extends far beyond your personal situation, Mrs. Mitchell. You've unveiled a systemic issue within medical investment practices." As he departed, Olivia Morales returned with breaking developments. Maryland's most prestigious hospital partners were publicly severing ties with the Patterson Medical Foundation, the exclusive medical society where they hosted their fundraising galas had revoked their membership. Their carefully cultivated empire of medical influence was rapidly disintegrating. "The resort management has formally requested their immediate departure," Olivia reported. "Their medical conference attendees are refusing to participate in events associated with those unconscionable people from the news. They're being escorted from the property as we speak." My phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. It was from Victor's executive assistant at Sentinel. "I've preserved the audio recordings from his private investment meetings. He and his mother have been orchestrating this for months. As a former nurse, I cannot remain silent any longer." I gazed out my hospital window at the gathering medical journalists, reflecting on how quickly truth could emerge when given the proper platform. The Pattersons had meticulously planned my destruction, but their own calculated cruelty had ultimately destroyed their reputation instead. The following day brought an unexpected visitor, Victor's former executive assistant. Danielle, nervously clutching a substantial portfolio of documents. "I can't keep hiding what I know," she confessed, her professional composure cracking. As she sank into the chair beside my hospital bed. The custody strategy, it wasn't simply about controlling the baby. There's significant financial motivation involved. Danielle spread numerous documents across my bed. Medical insurance policies, trust fund certificates, and INV. The implications made my stomach churn with visceral horror. Jasmine, who had been silently observing, straightened her shoulders. "This needs to go directly to the FBI Healthcare Fraud Division. This isn't merely a medical ethics violation, it's sophisticated insurance fraud with intent to harm." Olivia Morales arrived just as we were organizing the evidence. "We need to proceed with extreme caution," she advised, her investigative instincts evident. "The Pattersons maintain connections within hospital boards nationwide. They're already attempting to reframe this as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." As if orchestrated, my phone displayed a notification. Marilyn had released a video statement on the Foundation's medical outreach portal. Tears streaming perfectly down her surgically enhanced face. Estimate portfolios created a disturbing narrative. Victor and his family had secretly established multiple financial instruments related to my pregnancy, including a substantial medical crisis policy I'd never been informed about. They were deliberately building a narrative of professional instability, Danielle explained, her voice quavering with emotion. The abandonment wasn't merely cruelty, it was deliberately designed to trigger a medical emergency they could document. "If you'd experienced pregnancy complications on that mountain trail. Our only concern was protecting our grandchild's well-being," she claimed with practiced vulnerability. "Eliza's concerning behavior around patient boundaries had deeply worried us. As medical professionals, we never intended." The video abruptly terminated as an incoming call appeared, Victor himself. After brief consultation with Olivia and Danielle, I enabled the speakerphone. "Eliza, sweetheart, please," he implored, his voice honeyed with false sincerity. "This situation has spiraled out of control. Let's discuss this privately like medical professionals. Consider our daughter, she deserves the Patterson medical legacy." I contemplated the insurance schemes, the custody planning, the calculated medical endangerment. "You're absolutely right, Victor. She does deserve a medical legacy, just not one built on fraud and endangering patients for financial gain." "What are you suggesting?" His voice instantly hardened. "Choose your words carefully, Eliza. Remember exactly who you're challenging." "No, Victor. Remember who you chose to target, a pediatric medical therapist who meticulously documents everything, who has credible witnesses, multiple security recordings, and now your complete financial scheme exposed. Who has the entire medical community monitoring your every action." The line went silent for a moment. When he finally responded, all pretense of affection had vanished. "You'll deeply regret this decision. My family's influence." "Your family's influence is over," I interrupted firmly. "Check your notifications. The Medical Insurance Regulatory Commission just announced a comprehensive investigation into your foundation's financial practices. Apparently, they received extensive documentation of concerning activities." Danielle smiled grimly as she ended her own call. "Federal investigators have just arrived at their private chalet," she confirmed. "The Medical Insurance Fraud Division is providing full cooperation." I gently caressed my belly, feeling my daughter's powerful, determined movements. "She'll grow up understanding her mother defended medical ethics against exploitation," I said softly. "That's infinitely more valuable than any trust fund." Olivia's camera team captured the moment federal agents escorted Marilyn from the luxury resort in handcuffs, her carefully constructed facade of medical philanthropy crumbling as she faced the consequences of her calculated actions. Sometimes justice emerges through the most unexpected channels. 1 week later, I sat in my private hospital room cradling my newborn daughter. Emma, who had made her dramatic entrance nearly 3 weeks early, miraculously healthy, despite the stress and trauma that had preceded her birth. My heart swelled with fierce love as I traced her tiny perfect features with my fingertip, hardly believing she was finally here in my arms. The large television mounted on the wall continuously broadcast updates on the Patterson family's spectacular downfall. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the unfolding justice. Breaking news: federal investigators have uncovered an extensive pattern of medical insurance fraud throughout the Patterson Medical Foundation's operations. The medical correspondent announced with barely contained indignation. Sources close to the investigation reveal that the calculated abandonment of a high-risk pregnant healthcare worker was merely the visible symptom of a much more insidious system of exploitation. The coverage cut to footage of Victor being escorted from his attorney's office in handcuffs, his designer suit wrinkled and his carefully maintained facade completely shattered. Gone was the confident investment banker, replaced by a desperate man facing serious federal charges. Maryland's prestigious foundation was being systematically dismantled, all assets frozen pending investigation. Rebecca's carefully cultivated medical connections had vanished literally overnight, her magazine position terminated, with a public statement distancing the publication from her actions. Lawrence and Grace Turner from the Mountain Restaurant had sent a stunning arrangement of flowers with a handwritten note that brought tears to my eyes. Your daughter has inherited her mother's remarkable strength and resilience. That legacy outshines any prestigious family name or trust fund. Jasmine adjusted Emma's soft blanket as we watched Sentinel Investment Banking CEO deliver a somber statement. Sentinel is establishing a comprehensive support fund for healthcare professionals subjected to financial coercion and emotional manipulation. The initial endowment consists entirely of the performance bonuses revoked from Victor Patterson upon his immediate termination. I gazed down at Emma sleeping peacefully against my chest, her tiny hand curled trustingly around my finger. A wave of profound emotion washed over me as I realized she would grow up knowing her mother's courage and integrity, not her father's calculated cruelty and exploitation. Look at her, Jasmine whispered, gently stroking Emma's dark hair. She already has your determination written all over her face. Sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't about retribution, it's about reclaiming your narrative and building something meaningful from painful experiences. 6 months later, I returned to the pediatric oncology ward, warmly welcomed back by my young patients and the medical team that had supported me unfailingly throughout my ordeal. On my office desk sat a framed medical journal article. Mountain abandonment case catalyzes groundbreaking patient protection legislation. The Mitchell Medical Safety Act now classified the deliberate abandonment of vulnerable individuals, especially pregnant women or medical dependents, as a serious felony with enhanced penalties for healthcare professionals or those exploiting medical situations. Marilyn's perfectly rehearsed tears during her sentencing hearing had failed to move the federal judge, who specifically cited her unconscionable exploitation of medical vulnerability in handing down a 7-year sentence for orchestrated insurance fraud. Victor and Rebecca faced even harsher consequences for their central roles in the scheme, with additional charges of reckless endangerment. My experience had become an unexpected catalyst for systemic change. Sentinel Investment Banking had hired me as a key consultant for their new healthcare ethics oversight committee. Speaking requests arrived daily: medical ethics conferences, healthcare worker advocacy groups, patient safety summits, but my most fulfilling moments remained in the pediatric cancer ward, helping my young patients face their challenges with dignity and hope. Emma thrived, surrounded by a constellation of love from my true family, Jasmine, who became her devoted godmother, Lawrence and Grace, who visited monthly with homemade treats, and countless healthcare professionals across the country who had become passionate allies in our journey. The Patterson family's carefully curated online presence had disappeared completely, their once formidable influence in the medical community reduced to a cautionary case study in ethics courses nationwide. The most important lesson, I explained to a medical journal interviewer who asked what message I hoped others would take from my experience, is that authentic care always ultimately outshines performative prestige. Emma will grow up in a world where her mother didn't just endure, she helped transform. the medical community's approach to protecting its most vulnerable members. As I spoke these words, Emma babbled happily in her carrier beside me, reaching for the stethoscope around my neck with determined little fingers. I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. We had not merely survived, we had helped create meaningful change that would protect countless others.
My phone vibrated against the metal hospital breakroom table, the screen lighting up with 3 new messages from my mother. I felt my stomach tighten as I unlocked it, bracing myself for what I'd find. "Tori deserves it more, honey," Mom's text read, followed immediately by a photo of her arranging elaborate flower arrangements for tomorrow's celebration. "Victoria has always been more dedicated to building the right connections. You've always been too focused on your research instead of networking." The casual dismissal burned through me, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly. My knuckles turned white. I sat alone in the hospital break room, my neurology department ID badge still new enough that the edges hadn't frayed, trying to process the familiar pattern playing out yet again. "Mom, we both graduated with honors from the same medical school. We literally had identical GPAs," I typed back, my expression neutral despite the anger coursing through me. "I don't understand how you and Dad can justify paying off all of Tori's $300,000 in loans while telling me I need to build character through repaying mine." I stared at the 3 pulsing dots as she crafted her response. Each second they appeared and disappeared felt like another twist of the knife. "Eleanor," my mother finally replied, attaching a perfectly composed selfie of herself with my father at their country club. "Your sister doesn't have a wealthy supporter like Dr. Thornton pushing her forward. You've had some advantages that Victoria never got. We're just trying to balance things out." I had to bite my lip to keep from screaming in the otherwise quiet break room. Dr. Camilla Thornton became my research advisor because I'd earned that position through countless 80-hour weeks in the lab while Victoria was skiing in Aspen with our parents. I still had the photos saved in a folder labeled Evidence Number 37, Winter Break Disparities, screenshots of Tori's Instagram posts from luxury resorts juxtaposed with my time-stamped lab access logs. "So I'm being punished for creating my own opportunities?" I typed, then deleted it. Then typed it again. My finger hovered over the send button before I finally pressed it, adding, "I've documented every instance of this pattern since we were 12, you know." My father chimed in on the group text, "No one's punishing you, Ellie. We're just being practical. Victoria needs more support in establishing herself. You've always been more resourceful." Resourceful, the word they used when I showed them my science fair trophies while they were packing for Tori's soccer tournament in Florida. Resourceful, their explanation for why Victoria got a brand new BMW for her 21st birthday, while I received a refurbished laptop that crashed whenever I tried to run my research data. I pulled up the invitation to tomorrow's event on my phone, celebrating Dr. Victoria Blackwell's debt-free future. The glossy digital invitation featured Tori in her graduation cap and gown, with no mention that there were 2 Dr. Blackwells in the family now. I had the email saved alongside dozens of other examples in my documented inequality folder, a habit I'd developed since middle school. "I need to go," I texted back. "Early rounds tomorrow. You'll still make it to Victoria's celebration, right?" Mom replied instantly, her sudden concern transparent. "It would break her heart if you weren't there. She specifically asked for you." "I'll be there," I promised, though my chest felt tight at the thought. As I slipped my phone back into my scrubs pocket, it buzzed again with a message from Dr. Thornton. "I need to speak with you ASAP about the Patterson Fellowship. Results are in. Meet me in my office at 7 a.m. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. The Patterson Fellowship, the most prestigious neurology research position in the country. Only one graduating medical student nationwide would receive it each year. A cold clarity washed over me as I tucked the phone away and returned to my charts. My parents' favoritism was no longer just hurting me emotionally, it was about to come out in the open, and this time, I wasn't going to shield them from what they've done. My twin sister Victoria and I had traveled dramatically different paths since the moment we were born. I arrived first, she followed 6 minutes later. According to the story my parents loved to tell at parties, I quietly observed the delivery room with analytical eyes, while Victoria announced her arrival with strong, theatrical cries that charmed everyone in the room. I have this story documented in my journal from when I was 10, complete with the notation that my father checked his watch during the retelling to see how long he'd been praising Tori. Throughout our childhood in a wealthy suburb of Chicago, Victoria became the outgoing twin, making friends effortlessly and excelling at whatever sport caught her interest that season. I was quieter, more methodical, filling notebook after notebook with observations about everything from astronomy to marine biology. I still have the photo series I created at age 13 documenting how our parents attended 97% of Victoria's soccer games and dance recitals, while my science fair victories warranted a text message saying, "Good job, Ellie," if they remembered it all. The contrast became undeniable by high school, when we both announced our intentions to pursue medicine. Our parents threw Victoria a celebration dinner, inviting their physician friends from the country club. For me, there was a concerned conversation in my father's home office about the workload and whether I could handle the pressure without cracking. "Medical school requires more than just book smarts, Eleanor," my father had said, his voice heavy with fake concern that I can still hear perfectly in my mind. "It's about social intelligence and resilience. Victoria naturally connects with people." The irony still makes my blood boil. Throughout undergraduate studies at Northwestern, I maintained a perfect GPA while working part-time as a research assistant to cover expenses that my parents mysteriously couldn't afford for me. I have the spreadsheet showing they spent $37,000 on tutors for Victoria when she struggled with organic chemistry and physics. When she needed to retake the MCAT, they paid $12,000 for an exclusive prep course. When I scored in the 98th percentile on my first attempt, they replied to my text with, "That's nice, dear," which I screenshotted and added to my ever-growing documentation. Despite everything, I never let myself resent Victoria herself. She was my sister, my twin. And beneath the favoritism, I saw flashes of the same discomfort I felt. She didn't create our parents' obsession with molding her into their ideal daughter. She just benefited from it. Sometimes I caught her watching me with a complicated expression that seemed like admiration mixed with guilt, though she never directly acknowledged the inequality. We both got accepted to the University of Michigan Medical School, and for 4 years, we studied together, supported each other through brutal rotations, and celebrated our achievements in late-night calls when our parents weren't around. I foolishly thought perhaps finally they would see us as equally valuable. Instead, they found new ways to elevate Victoria's achievements while dismissing mine. When I was selected to present groundbreaking research at a national conference, they claimed they couldn't attend because Victoria had received a minor departmental award that same weekend. I have the email where they explained their decision, filed under evidence number 142, Professional Achievement Disparities. Everything shifted dramatically during our final year, when Dr. Camilla Thornton, one of the most renowned neurosurgeons in the country, noticed my research on pediatric neurovascular regeneration. Under her mentorship, I flourished. For the first time, I had someone who valued my analytical mind, who pushed me to excel precisely because of my methodical approach, not despite it. "You have a unique gift for research, Eleanor," Dr. Thornton told me during a late night in the lab, her eyes sharp with recognition I'd craved my entire life. "You see patterns in neural pathways that others miss completely. That kind of insight can't be taught, it can only be nurtured." If only my parents could see me through her eyes instead of through the warped lens they'd created. The morning before Victoria's celebration, I arrived at Dr. Thornton's office at exactly 7 a.m., my heart pounding against my ribs. Dr. Thornton was already at her desk. Her silver hair pulled back in a precise bun, those penetrating blue eyes focused on her computer screen. Her office walls displayed dozens of awards, published papers, and photos with medical pioneers from around the world. "Eleanor, come in," she said, looking up with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Close the door behind you." My palms were sweating as I sat across from her. For 6 weeks, I'd been waiting to hear about the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, the most prestigious neurology research position in the country that would launch my career into the stratosphere. Only one graduating medical student nationwide would receive it each year. "The committee has made their decision on the Patterson Fellowship," Dr. Thornton said. Her expression deliberately neutral, but I caught the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. I held my breath, my fingers digging into my thighs under the desk. "They've selected you," she said, her professional composure giving way to a broad smile. "Congratulations, Dr. Eleanor Blackwell. You're going to Baltimore. And you're going to revolutionize the field." I was overwhelmed with happiness, disbelief, and a feeling of triumph. The Patterson Fellowship, the highest achievement for any neurological researcher, was finally mine. I could feel tears welling up. I don't even know what to say," I stammered, my voice thick with emotion. "You don't need to say anything," Dr. Thornton said firmly, leaning forward. "You earned this through extraordinary work. Your research on neurovascular regeneration using that innovative dual imaging technique you developed is genuinely groundbreaking. The committee was particularly impressed with your methodology combining surgical mapping with targeted pharmacological intervention. They've never seen anything like it." She handed me the official offer letter, and my eyes immediately caught the financial details. The fellowship included a generous $90,000 annual stipend, a housing allowance in Baltimore's expensive market, and most significantly, complete loan forgiveness for my $320,000 in medical school debt. I would be debt-free, just like Victoria, but through my own merit rather than parental preference. "There's something else," Dr. Thornton continued, a mischievous glint appearing in her eyes. "I received an invitation to Victoria's celebration tonight. Your parents extended it to department heads as a professional courtesy, clearly not realizing our close working relationship. I'd like to announce the fellowship news there, if you're comfortable with that." My stomach clenched painfully. "I don't know, Dr. Thornton. It's supposed to be Victoria's night, and my parents will definitely see it as me trying to steal her spotlight." Dr. Thornton's expression hardened slightly. "Eleanor, I've observed your family dynamic these past 2 years. I've seen your parents at hospital functions, heard how they speak about both you and your sister. I've reviewed the documentation you've meticulously maintained. I understand your hesitation, but sometimes recognition needs to be public to be acknowledged at all." She was absolutely right. If my parents heard about the fellowship privately, they'd find a way to diminish it or attribute it to luck rather than the thousands of hours of work it represented. "Okay," I nodded slowly, straightening my shoulders. "You can announce it." As I left her office, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Mom has hired professional photographers for tonight. It's mortifying. I wish she'd put this much effort into celebrating both of us graduating. This whole thing feels wrong. See you there." I stared at the message, my brain struggling to process it. It was the most direct acknowledgement Victoria had ever made of our parents' unequal treatment. Before I could respond, another text came through from my mother. "Eleanor, wear the navy dress tonight, not one of your pantsuits. This is a sophisticated event, and Victoria needs everyone looking their best. This night is extremely important to her future." The contrast between the two messages made my head spin. Perhaps I had misjudged Victoria all these years. And perhaps tonight would finally force our parents to confront the truth they had been carefully avoiding for nearly 3 decades. Victoria's debt-free celebration was being held at an upscale restaurant overlooking the Chicago skyline. My parents had rented out the entire glass-enclosed rooftop for the evening, an extravagance that I mentally calculated at around $15,000 for a 4-hour event. As the elevator doors slid open, I was immediately confronted by an enormous banner stretching across the entrance, "Congratulations, Dr. Victoria Blackwell," with no acknowledgement that there were, in fact, 2 Dr. Blackwells graduating. My heart hammered against my ribs as I smoothed down my navy blue dress, the one my mother had specifically instructed me to wear. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was Victoria's night, regardless of what Dr. Thornton planned to announce. I wouldn't let decades of documented inequality destroy my relationship with my twin, Ellie. Victoria spotted me immediately, breaking away from a cluster of our relatives to rush over. She looked stunning in a silver cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her blonde hair, identical to mine in color, styled in a trendy bob, while I kept mine long and simply pulled back. "Thank God you're here," she whispered, grabbing my hands. "Aunt Patricia has asked me 4 times if I have a boyfriend yet, and Dad keeps introducing me as the next face of Blackwell development to every doctor over 50. I couldn't help but laugh despite the knot in my stomach. "What are you telling Aunt Patricia?" "That I'm married to psychiatry, but if she knows any eligible neurosurgeons who aren't terrified of our father, I'm accepting applications." Victoria linked her arm through mine, pulling me deeper into the party. "Seriously though, this is completely over the top. Mom hired a professional photographer who keeps asking me to pose alone by the cake. Dean Wilson is here with his entire family." I scanned the crowded terrace and indeed spotted the medical school dean chatting animatedly with my father, both men holding expensive scotch. Geez, they didn't hold back at all. It's beyond excessive. It's embarrassing. Victoria lowered her voice further, glancing around to ensure no one could hear. "And why just for me? We both graduated with honors. We both survived the same hellish rotations and sleepless nights." The tight band around my chest loosened slightly. Maybe Victoria was more aware of the inequality than I'd given her credit for all these years. "Eleanor." "Victoria." Our mother appeared suddenly, champagne flute in hand, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. "Victoria, darling, the Hendersons just arrived. You remember Thomas Henderson, the chief of surgery at Chicago Memorial, who's on the board with your father? You absolutely must come say hello. He mentioned his son is joining his practice." She took Victoria's arm, effectively separating us, then glanced back at me with that familiar dismissive look. "Eleanor, there seems to be some confusion with the seating arrangements. Your father's clients from Boston were placed at table 8 instead of table 3. Could you sort it out with the event coordinator? Your organizational skills are so much better than mine." And just like that, I was relegated to event management while Victoria was paraded before influential hospital administrators. I added the incident to my mental documentation file as I headed toward the event coordinator's station. I was directing the staff to the correct table when Dr. Thornton arrived. She looked formidable in a perfectly tailored crimson pantsuit, her silver hair and commanding presence drawing eyes without effort. "Eleanor," she said warmly, embracing me with genuine affection. "Are you ready for our announcement?" "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted, lowering my voice. "The timing feels more complicated than I expected." Dr. Thornton surveyed the party with her shrewd clinical gaze, taking in the ostentatious banner, the 3-tiered cake decorated only with Victoria's name, and the professional slideshow of photos where Victoria was featured prominently while I occasionally appeared in the background or partially cropped from frame. "I see," she said quietly, her lips thinning. "More complicated than either of us realized." Across the terrace, I watched as my parents introduced Victoria to Dr. Gabriel Reyes, the chief neurosurgeon at Chicago Medical Center, where both Victoria and I had applied for residency positions. My chest tightened painfully as I observed my father's arm around Victoria's shoulder, the way he leaned in to whisper something. That made Dr. Reyes smile politely. Were they actively trying to secure Victoria a position through personal connections while I was left to compete on merit alone? Dr. Thornton. My father had spotted her and was now approaching with my mother and Victoria in tow, his businessman's smile firmly in place. What an honor to have someone of your stature join us this evening. I understand you've worked with Eleanor on some research project? Some research project? Dr. Thornton raised a perfectly arched eyebrow, her voice remaining pleasant but taking on an edge I recognized from when she addressed incompetent residents. Eleanor has been my primary research partner for the past 2 years. Her groundbreaking work on neurovascular regeneration imaging has revolutionized how we approach pediatric brain trauma. Her contribution wasn't just instrumental, it was fundamental to the entire study's success. My parents exchanged that quick glance I documented countless times, the one that said they were recalibrating their approach. How nice, my mother said vaguely, her smile never reaching her eyes. Victoria has also been deeply involved in neurological research. In fact, Dr. Reyes was just commenting on how impressed she is with Victoria's innovative approach to her department's program. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, my fingers curling into fists at my sides. Victoria skipped the whole neurological surgery research thing. She was focused solely on mental health and therapy, which are totally different specialties in the medical field. My parents were blatantly misrepresenting her experience, potentially undermining my own hard-earned opportunities. Dr. Thornton's expression remained professionally pleasant, but I could see that dangerous glint in her eyes that surgeons recognized as a warning sign. Is that so? How fascinating. I was under the distinct impression that Victoria's focus was exclusively on psychiatric applications rather than surgical interventions. In fact, I recently reviewed the department's research publications, and I don't recall seeing Victoria's name on any surgical studies. An awkward silence fell over our small group. Victoria looked mortified. My father's smile became brittle, and my mother took a too large sip of her champagne. The trap of hope I'd set for myself was snapping shut around me. This announcement was going to expose decades of favoritism, and I wasn't sure if that would heal or permanently fracture our family. The dinner portion of the evening was in full swing, with my parents seated at the head table alongside Victoria, our grandparents, and Dr. Reyes. I was placed at a secondary table with cousins and family friends I barely knew, close enough to hear the conversation at the main table but explicitly excluded from participating in it. We always knew Victoria was destined for greatness, my father was saying loudly enough for neighboring tables to hear, his hand resting on Victoria's shoulder. Even when the girls were little, Victoria showed such natural leadership. She's always been our ambitious one, our people person. Each word pierced me like a tiny needle. I pushed my expertly prepared salmon around my plate, appetite completely gone. Nearby, Dr. Thornton was seated with other faculty members, occasionally catching my eye with knowing glances that conveyed both sympathy and determination. After the dessert was served, a chocolate soufflé that I documented was served to the head table 2 minutes before the rest of the guests. My father stood and tapped his crystal glass for attention. Thank you all for coming to celebrate our daughter Victoria's remarkable achievement, he began, his practiced public speaking voice carrying across the room. As many of you know, medical school is a challenging and expensive journey. To emerge not only with a prestigious degree but completely debt-free is truly extraordinary. The crowd applauded politely. I noticed Victoria shifting uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes seeking mine across the room. Diana and I are blessed to have been able to support Victoria throughout her education. My father continued, gesturing for my mother to join him. We always believed in investing in her future because we recognized her special potential to make the Blackwell name proud in medicine. My mother stood, adding with her perfect social smile, Victoria has always shown such promise. And we know this is just the beginning of her meteoric rise in her field. I stared at my plate, fighting back hot tears that threatened to spill over. The wording was precisely calculated. They had invested in Victoria, not in both their daughters. The distinction couldn't have been clearer if they'd projected my documented evidence on the wall behind them. Actually, Victoria said suddenly, standing up and taking the microphone from our startled father. I'd like to say something important. She met my eyes, her face a puzzling mix of wanting to apologize and being set on something. This celebration feels wrong and incomplete, she stated clearly. Eleanor and I both graduated with identical GPAs from the same medical school. We both worked incredibly hard through the same challenges, and frankly, Eleanor worked harder because she did it without the support system I had. She worked part-time jobs throughout undergrad and medical school, while maintaining perfect grades and conducting groundbreaking research. A hush fell over the crowd. My parents looked absolutely stunned, my father's face reddening dangerously. Victoria, my mother whispered urgently, tugging at her arm. This isn't the appropriate time for this discussion. It's exactly the time, Victoria insisted, gently pulling away. I cannot and will not accept recognition that deliberately excludes my sister. It's not right. And it never has been. I've known it for years but never had the courage to say it until now. My throat constricted with emotion. After all these years of careful documentation and silent suffering, Victoria was publicly acknowledging what I'd experienced. It was simultaneously validating and heartbreaking. My father recovered quickly, stepping forward with an overly jovial laugh. Of course, we're proud of both our girls. Eleanor has done wonderfully too. But tonight is specifically about celebrating Victoria's debt-free graduation, which is a special achievement we wanted to recognize. An achievement you facilitated with your checkbook, not one I earned through merit. Victoria countered, her voice steady but firm. Eleanor earned everything she accomplished without your financial support. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. This was rapidly becoming the precise scenario my parents had always feared, their carefully crafted public image of perfect family harmony cracking wide open in front of their social and business connections. Dr. Thornton chose that electric moment to stand, her commanding presence immediately drawing all eyes. If I might contribute something relevant to this conversation, she said, her authoritative voice slicing through the uncomfortable murmurs. This seems like the perfect opportunity to share some significant news about Eleanor that many of you may not be aware of. My parents exchanged alarmed glances, my father's hand tightening visibly around his whiskey glass. Eleanor's revolutionary research on neurovascular regeneration imaging has earned her the Patterson Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Thornton announced clearly. For those not familiar with medical academia, this is unquestionably the single most prestigious position offered to any graduating medical student in the entire country. Only one student nationwide receives this honor each year. It comes with complete loan forgiveness, a substantial annual stipend of $90,000, and housing allowance in Baltimore. Gasps and surprised murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. Dr. Reyes was now looking at me with intense professional interest. Even my normally disinterested cousins were whispering excitedly and turning to stare at me. Furthermore, Dr. Thornton continued with precision. The International Selection Committee specifically cited Eleanor's innovative dual imaging approach methodology, which she developed independently while balancing a full clinical rotation schedule and part-time work. In my 30-year career, I've had the privilege of mentoring hundreds of promising physicians. But I can state unequivocally that I have rarely encountered the level of dedication, insight, and raw talent that Eleanor consistently demonstrates. The room erupted in spontaneous applause, genuine, enthusiastic recognition directed at me for perhaps the first time in my life. People were turning in their seats, many standing to see me better, smiling and nodding with newfound respect. My parents remained frozen at the head table, their expressions a complicated mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning horror as they realized their carefully constructed narrative about their daughters was publicly disintegrating. Victoria was beaming at me from the head table, not even a hint of jealousy. In her expression, nothing but pure, sisterly pride. Dr. Thornton wasn't finished. Additionally, I'm pleased to announce that I've personally arranged for the entirety of Eleanor's substantial medical school debt to be covered through our department's Merit Scholarship Fund, a decision that was unanimously approved by the board. In recognition of her extraordinary contributions to our groundbreaking research program. I was debt-free too, and I had earned every penny of it through my own merit and hard work. After Dr. Thornton's announcement, the energy of the celebration shifted dramatically. Faculty members who had previously clustered around Victoria were now making their way to my table, eyes bright with newfound interest, asking detailed questions about my research methodology and congratulating me on the fellowship. Several of my clinical supervisors shared stories about my patient care that I had no idea they'd even noticed or remembered. Your diagnostic approach with that complex epilepsy case last month was brilliant, Dr. Chin told me, her hand warm on my shoulder. The way you connected those seemingly unrelated symptoms, that's exactly the kind of insight the Patterson program is looking for. My parents remained frozen at their table, shock still evident on their faces like a pair of statues at a museum. They weren't just processing the news of my fellowship and complete loan forgiveness, they were witnessing the public dismantling of the narrative they'd carefully constructed about their daughters for nearly 3 decades. The quiet, analytical twin, who was often brushed aside, is finally getting the recognition she deserves in her career. I could feel my heart pounding as I watched their carefully manicured social facade crumbling before my eyes. For once, I wasn't documenting their reactions, I was simply experiencing the moment. Victoria made her way through the crowd to my side, 2 champagne flutes in hand. "Congratulations, Ellie," she said, her eyes shining with genuine pride as she clinked her glass against mine. "The Patterson Fellowship, that's absolutely incredible. Why didn't you tell me you were even in the running?" "I only found out this morning," I said, taking a sip of the bubbly liquid. "And honestly, I didn't want to disrupt your celebration." Victoria's expression hardened. This ridiculous extravaganza was completely Mom and Dad's idea, not mine. I tried repeatedly to tell them it was excessive and horribly unfair to you. But you know how they steamroll over any objection once they've decided on their narrative. "You actually tried to stop this?" I asked, genuine surprise washing over me. Victoria's eyes widened with hurt. "Of course I did. Ellie, I've always known. They treated us completely differently. Their favoritism has been obvious since we were kids. Her voice dropped. I didn't know how to challenge it without making everything worse for both of us. Every time I tried, they'd just double down. Before I could process this revelation, Dr. Gabrielle Reyes approached us, her professional demeanor unable to hide her excitement. "Dr. Blackwell," she said, looking directly at me rather than Victoria. "I was incredibly impressed by Dr. Thornton's description of your innovative imaging technique. We should seriously discuss whether you'd consider bringing your research to our neurosurgery department after your fellowship instead of staying at Johns Hopkins." I blinked in surprise, nearly spilling my champagne. "That's very flattering, Dr. Reyes." "But she's already committed to the Patterson program," Victoria interjected, wrapping her arm protectively around my shoulders. "It's literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that she absolutely earned. But you should know my sister never focuses on just one revolutionary approach at a time. I guarantee she'll have another groundbreaking study underway before she's even settled in Baltimore." Dr. Reyes smiled, clearly impressed by my sister's fierce advocacy. Well, when you've completed the fellowship, please keep Chicago in mind. We would be extremely fortunate to have a researcher of your caliber. She turned to Victoria with genuine respect. Both of you would be assets to our institution, in your respective specialties. After she walked away, I turned to Victoria in amazement. You didn't have to defend me like that. I know you were hoping to stay in Chicago for your residency with Dr. Reyes's department. And I still can, Victoria said firmly, squeezing my shoulder. But I won't do it by letting Mom and Dad manipulate connections or by watching you miss out on the recognition you've earned. That's not who I want to be anymore, Ellie. I'm done being their favorite if it means hurting you. Across the room, I saw my parents finally rising from their table, moving hesitantly in our direction. Their progress was painfully slow, repeatedly interrupted by guests who suddenly wanted to talk about me, a novel experience that was visibly unsettling for them both. Here they come, Victoria murmured, straightening her spine. Are you ready for this confrontation? Not even remotely, I admitted, feeling my stomach clench. Dr. Thornton certainly had some impressive things to say about your work. My father said when they finally reached us, his tone carefully calibrated to sound proud, while barely masking his confusion and discomfort. The Patterson Fellowship, that's quite a prestigious honor, my mother added, her voice tight. Why didn't you tell us you were even being considered for something of this magnitude? We could have prepared for the announcement. Would it have honestly mattered? I asked quietly, looking directly into her eyes. You've both made it abundantly clear where your support and interest have always been focused. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. The silent communication I'd documented for years. That's not a fair assessment, Eleanor, my father began, his business negotiation voice emerging. We've always supported both of you, just differently, my mother interjected quickly, her hand fluttering nervously at her pearl necklace. We supported you both in different ways because you had different needs and personalities. Victoria shook her head decisively. Mom, Dad, we are not doing this tonight in front of everyone. But we are absolutely going to have a real, honest conversation about the past 29 years, all four of us. She gave me a meaningful look full of newfound solidarity. No more gaslighting, no more pretending, no more selective memory. Dr. Thornton appeared at my elbow, saving me from having to respond. Eleanor, the dean and the chief of neurology at Northwestern are asking to speak with you. Something about featuring your research and fellowship in the alumni magazine's cover story. She turned to my parents with a pleasant expression that didn't quite reach her penetrating eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell, you must be extraordinarily proud to have raised two such accomplished daughters, though I imagine it's particularly gratifying to see Eleanor's brilliance finally recognized after everything she's had to overcome to get here. The emphasis on overcome was subtle but unmistakable. My parents were clearly feeling embarrassed and looked pretty sheepish. Well, my mother said weakly, her social mask slipping. We've always known Eleanor was special too, in her own way. Too little, too late, and we all knew it. The week after the celebration was completely transformative. News of my Patterson Fellowship spread like wildfire through the medical community in Chicago. And suddenly doors that had been firmly closed to me swung wide open. Department heads who had previously ignored my emails were now personally calling to discuss my research. Former professors who had given Victoria extensions while denying mine were suddenly flooding my inbox with congratulations and claims they'd always seen my potential. Classmates who had barely acknowledged my existence during 4 years of medical school were now sending connection requests and messages claiming close friendship. My parents, meanwhile, were frantically attempting damage control on multiple fronts. They showed up unannounced at my apartment the day after the party, arms laden with designer shopping bags and wearing transparently forced smiles. We've been thinking, my father announced as he placed an elegant blue box on my coffee table. With both of you graduating and embarking on your careers, We wanted to get you girls something special to mark the occasion. We got you this. Inside was a white gold Cartier watch, identical to the one they'd given Victoria for her birthday 6 months earlier, a gift I had photographed and added to my documentation file, complete with the $12,500 price tag I'd researched. It's beautiful, I said without reaching to touch it, my voice calm and detached, though the timing feels calculated. My mother flinched visibly. Eleanor, we understand you might feel overlooked occasionally, but everything we did was because we genuinely believed you could handle challenges on your own. Victoria simply needed more support and guidance. You've really spun a useful narrative there, I said, keeping my tone steady, while feeling a newfound confidence in their presence. But it doesn't explain why you attended all 73 of Victoria's presentations, but only 2 of mine, why you paid $12,000 for her MCAT prep course, but told me to use free online resources, why you covered her apartment in the luxury building near campus while suggesting I take out additional loans for basic housing. We don't have unlimited resources, Eleanor, my father protested, his businessman's facade cracking. We had to make practical choices with our finances. Yes, you absolutely did make choices, I agreed, meeting his gaze directly. And consistently, systematically, for 29 years, you chose Victoria at every opportunity. My mother's eyes filled with tears, her hand trembling as she reached toward me. We love you both equally, she insisted. You have to believe that. Maybe somewhere deep down you do, I conceded, but you haven't treated us equally by any objective measure. And expensive watches and belated recognition won't erase decades of documented inequality. My phone rang with perfect timing, Dr. Thornton calling to discuss my upcoming move to Baltimore and research budget allocation. I answered it gratefully, turning away from my parents' stunned faces. Yes, I'm absolutely available to discuss the housing options near the research center, I said into the phone, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. In fact, your timing couldn't be more perfect. 3 weeks later, I stood in my nearly empty apartment, the last boxes packed and labeled for the moving company. Victoria sat on the windowsill, watching me carefully tape up a final container of medical journals and research notes. I still can't wrap my head around you leaving next week, she said, genuine sadness in her voice. Chicago won't feel right without you just across town. You'll be so consumed with your psychiatry residency you'll barely notice I'm gone. I teased, though we both recognized the truth beneath it. We'd been physically inseparable through medical school, but our paths were finally and rightfully diverging, mine to Johns Hopkins, hers staying at Chicago Medical Center. I can't stop thinking about what Mom and Dad did all these years, Victoria said unexpectedly, tracing her fingers on the window glass. Or didn't do, really. All this time? I thought I was the fortunate one because they gave me everything and paid attention to me. But they were actually stunting my independence, making me emotionally dependent on their approval and financial support. I sat beside her on the windowsill, the afternoon sun warming us both. You didn't create their favoritism, Tori. You didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do enough right either, she countered, meeting my eyes. I should have stood up for you much sooner, more forcefully. She sighed deeply. They're absolutely devastated now, you know. Mom calls me crying almost daily about how you must hate them both. Dad's telling everyone who'll listen about his brilliant neurology researcher daughter at Johns Hopkins, as if he personally funded your studies and encouraged your career all along. Let them rewrite history if they need to, I said, surprising myself with how genuinely unbothered I felt. Their approval or recognition doesn't define my worth anymore. And I meant it completely. The persistent ache of seeking validation from parents who had never truly seen me had finally subsided, replaced by a calm confidence. Dr. Thornton's mentorship had shown me what genuine professional support looked like, challenging me when I needed pushing, defending me when I needed advocacy, and always always seeing my full potential without qualification or comparison. So what happens now? Victoria asked softly. With us, I mean. With the relationship we deserve to have. I took her hand, feeling the identical shape of our fingers. We create our own journey, leaving behind the made-up competition they pushed on us. We lift each other up without comparing our achievements. I'd love that more than anything, Victoria smiled, squeezing my hand tightly. Dr. Eleanor Blackwell, Patterson Fellowship recipient. I am so incredibly proud of you, Ellie. I always have been, even when I didn't know how to show it. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely at peace with my identity and future. The path ahead was challenging but brilliantly clear. And entirely mine to navigate on my own terms, documented in my own words.
My name is Kenya, and I never imagined I would share the story. My upbringing seemed quite typical, with my older brother Daniel, our parents, and me living in a modest home on the street. My mother stayed at home, managing some inherited money, while my father tirelessly worked as a sales manager at Burke's Building Supplies. Although we weren't wealthy, we managed just fine. Growing up, it appeared that my parents treated Daniel and me equally. They even saved for our college education, making sacrifices wherever necessary. When Daniel finished high school, our parents celebrated with a big party. Fast forward to my graduation. The celebration was markedly subdued, just a quiet dinner before I left for college. Driving away, I felt a sense of relief, as if I could finally escape the shadow of Daniel and breathe freely. The college opened up a new world for me. I made friends, joined the debate team, and even started dating. I occasionally video call home to share my experiences, but it felt like my parents were waiting for their chance to bring up Daniel, their golden boy. Time flew by, and soon I was returning home with my degree, eager to start my career in the city. But the moment I stepped inside, dragging my suitcases, I sensed a change. The house smelled strongly of cleaner, as if my mother had been on a cleaning spree. Kenya, honey, welcome home. She greeted me briefly before hurrying back to prepare for Daniel's new girlfriend, who was coming over for dinner. It was clear nothing had changed. I was still just a secondary thought in my own home. Over the next few days, I watched as my parents doted on Daniel and his girlfriend, Harley. Daniel had secured a prestigious job at an investment firm, and suddenly, he could do no wrong. My mother acted more like a maid than a parent, catering to Daniel and Harley's every need, even maintaining Daniel's room, as if he were still a child. I quickly realized I didn't belong there anymore. My childhood bedroom had been converted into Daniel's home office, and Harley had taken my place at the dinner table. It felt as if I had been erased from the family. One evening, after dinner, my father took me aside. Kenya, he began, his tone more transactional than fatherly. Your mother, and I think it's time you found your place. You're a college graduate now. It's time to spread your wings. I was stunned. They were essentially evicting me, and the nonchalant way my father spoke made it seem as though he was doing me a favor. That night, I called Grandma Lakeland, my father's mother and the only sensible person left in our family. Oh, sweetie, she said warmly over the phone after hearing my story. You come to stay with me. I've got plenty of room. I was tempted. Her house was practically a palace. But deep down, I knew it was time for me to carve out my path, one where I wasn't overshadowed by anyone else. I knew it was time to rely on myself. Thanks, Grandma, but I think I need to do this on my own, I told her. There was a brief pause before she replied, her voice filled with pride. I'm proud of you, Kenya. Tell you what, I'll cover your first month's rent as a graduation gift. Despite my attempts to decline, Grandma insisted. A week later, I was settling into my new apartment. It was a simple studio with a small kitchenette and a view of the parking lot, but it was all mine. I secured an entry-level position at a local marketing firm. It was a humble beginning, but it marked the start of my new life. I immersed myself in my work, eager to establish a life distinctly separate from the family drama that had unfolded. As the months passed, I occasionally received texts from my mom, always generic messages like, "Hope you're doing well." It seemed I had become a peripheral figure to them, overshadowed by Daniel, their ticket to a comfortable retirement. But life is full of surprises. 5 months after my move, I met Charles. He was different. He genuinely listened and cared about my dreams and fears. For the first time, I felt truly valued. Our relationship progressed rapidly, and within 5 months, Charles and I decided to move in together. Then, one evening, amidst a casual dinner of Chinese takeout in our small living room, Charles proposed. I said yes, thrilled by the prospect of starting a new chapter with him. Introducing Charles to my parents was the next hurdle. When they learned about his stable job at a tech startup and his apartment, their enthusiasm was unmistakable. During dinner, my dad eagerly asked Charles about his work. Charles explained his role in app development and his aspirations for the company's future. My parents were visibly impressed, hanging on every word. "What are your plans for the future, career-wise?" my mom interjected. Charles shared his ambitions, including a detailed 6-year plan. With each detail, I watched my parents grow more fond of him. Finally, my dad gave Charles a hearty slap on the back. "Well, son, I think you'll make a fine addition to our family." I was stunned. After years of struggling to meet their expectations, suddenly, I was back in their good graces, all because I had found someone they approved of. The next day, my mom called, bubbling with excitement. "Kenya, honey, your father and I have been talking. We want to help with the wedding. We'll cover half the costs and handle all the organizing. We want your day to be perfect." I felt a warm glow in my heart. After all these years, it seemed I finally mattered to them, that I was on equal footing with Daniel. However, the ensuing months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. My mom took the reins, securing the fanciest restaurant in town for the reception, while my dad compiled an extensive guest list, including every distant relative and business associate. I threw myself into every detail, from selecting flowers to tasting cakes, fully immersed in the excitement of planning my perfect day. After finally discovering the perfect wedding dress, a stunning creation of lace and satin that transformed me into a princess, my anticipation was shattered just 3 weeks before the ceremony. The devastating news came through a phone call from my mom. "Kenya, honey," she began, her voice strained, "I'm so sorry, but we have to call off the wedding." Confused and feeling like I'd been sucker punched, I demanded an explanation. "It's your brother," she replied, her voice cracking. "He and Harley had a terrible fight. She's left him, and he's in pieces." As I clutched my phone, struggling to comprehend, Mom explained further. "We can't possibly celebrate now with your brother in such a state. It just wouldn't be appropriate." Stunned, I tried to argue. "Mom, everything is set. Guests have booked their flights. How can we cancel everything on such short notice?" At that moment, my dad joined the call. "Kenya," he interjected, "don't be selfish. Your brother needs our support now." "Selfish," I retorted, my voice rising in disbelief. "This is my wedding." "Kenya, stop," my dad snapped. "You're being too dramatic. You can marry anytime. Right now, we need to be there for your brother." Before I could respond, my mom coldly instructed me to inform the guests of the cancellation, and they hung up. Standing there, phone still in hand, I was overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions. How was I supposed to tell Charles, his parents, and all our friends who had made travel arrangements? It seemed incomprehensible that my parents would disregard all our plans and promises simply because my brother's relationship had ended. Collapsing against the wall, a mixture of laughter and tears escaped me, a reaction to the sheer absurdity and betrayal of the situation. After some time spent in stunned silence, anger began to take hold. I called my brother Daniel, who answered after several rings, sounding annoyed. When I confronted him about the situation, he nonchalantly admitted to ruining his relationship by cheating and expressed a desire to win Harley back. As for my wedding, he dismissively stated it wasn't his concern and claimed he hadn't planned on attending anyway. Shocked by his indifference, I hung up and immediately redialed my parents, trembling with rage. When my mom answered, I cut her off to reveal Daniel's infidelity. There was a pause, and then my dad came on the line, but before he could speak, I realized that regardless of their response, my wedding was no longer just about union. It was about standing up for my own life's milestones, regardless of my brother's mistakes. As I hung up the phone with my parents, declaring my wedding canceled, a mix of disbelief and anger surged through me. How could they prioritize my brother over my wedding, especially at such short notice? In a fit of frustration, I tossed my phone onto the couch, barely containing the urge to scream. Desperate for some support, I reached out to the one person who always seemed to understand, Grandma Lakeland. "Grandma," I began, my voice cracking from emotion, "I need your help." I recounted the entire ordeal to her, the sudden cancellation, Daniel's betrayal, and our parents' unwavering decision to support him despite everything. Grandma listened silently, offering a soft, "Oh, dear," now and then. When I finished, she spoke with a tone rich in empathy. "What a mess, my dear. Don't worry, I'll try to talk some sense into them." An hour later, Grandma called back, her voice heavy with defeat. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she said. "I tried, but they wouldn't listen. Your father has even gone ahead and canceled the restaurant and notified your guests." Feeling a wave of despair, I realized how clear my parents had made their priorities. Daniel would always come first, no matter the cost to anyone else. The next morning, a knock on my door jolted me from a restless sleep. It was Grandma Lakeland, standing there with a tray of coffee and pastries. "Thought you could use some breakfast," she said, sweeping past me into the apartment. As we sat at my small kitchen table, me clutching a mug of coffee as if it were a lifeline, Grandma dropped another shocking revelation. "I found out why your parents canceled your wedding," she said, her voice tinged with anger. "They bought Daniel an expensive vacation package for two and a brand new sports car." My heart sank. "But how can they afford all that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Grandma reached out, her hand comforting mine. "They can't, dear. That's why they canceled your wedding. They're using that money for Daniel's grand apology to Harley." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Not only had my parents chosen to support Daniel's reconciliation attempts, but they were also financing it by sacrificing my special day. "They're even planning to pay for his wedding if Harley takes him back," Grandma continued, her voice soft but filled with sorrow. I sat in stunned silence, absorbing the full weight of their decision. Grandma's next words brought me back. "Listen to me. You deserve your special day, and I'm going to make sure you have it. I'll pay for your wedding." Tears overwhelmed me, and Grandma came around the table to wrap me in a comforting hug. "No more tears," she said gently, stroking my hair. "We've got a wedding to plan." Over the next few hours, we were in a flurry of activity. I sent a mass email to all the guests, apologizing for the confusion and announcing the new wedding date, just 3 weeks away. Charles was incredibly supportive, helping every step of the way. Grandma and I were determined. Despite the hurt and the setbacks, we were going to make sure this wedding happened, filled with love and surrounded by those who truly supported us. When I broke the news to Charles about the cancellation of our original wedding plans, his reaction was nothing short of comforting. He embraced me gently and assured me, "As long as I'm marrying you, the details don't matter." His parents echoed his support, with his mom eagerly offering to help with the new arrangements. "We're family now, dear. We stick together," she said warmly. In the weeks that followed, our wedding planning turned into a bustling project of love and excitement. Charles, his parents, Grandma, and I were fully engaged, securing a new venue, reconfirming with the caterer, and ensuring everything was set for our big day. Amid the flurry of preparations, I felt a bittersweet mix of emotions, elation for the life Charles and I were about to start together, and a poignant sadness for the family ties that seemed to be unraveling. My parents remained silent throughout this period, not once reaching out after they had withdrawn from the initial plans. It felt as though I had become invisible to them. Just as I was trying to reconcile with this estrangement, my mom escalated the situation unexpectedly. My phone was inundated with her calls, which I initially ignored, leading to a series of voicemails laden with accusations. "Kenya," her voice seethed, I know what you're doing with your grandmother.
Stop it right now.
You have no right to turn her against us. I deleted her messages with a mix of frustration and disbelief. Yet, the messages persisted, each one more accusatory than the last, suggesting I was exploiting Grandma for financial gain and threatening dire consequences if I didn't cease. The situation took a dramatic turn when Charles, looking notably upset, called me over to show me something on his phone. It was a Facebook post from my mom that read like a public denouncement. It breaks my heart to say this, but my daughter Kenya has shown her true colors. She's manipulating her poor, confused grandmother for money. She doesn't care about family, only herself. How did we raise such a selfish child? I scrolled through the comments in shock, finding that my dad had joined the fray, painting me as a jealous sibling undermining the family. Distraught but determined, I went to Grandma Lakeland's house, where she was already setting up her iPad, ready to counter their claims. Your parents think I don't know how to use the internet, she chuckled. Let's show them how wrong they are. We spent the next hour recording a video response. Grandma addressed the camera directly, her voice unwavering and clear. I'm Lakeland Thompson, and I'm here to set the record straight. I'm of sound mind, and I'm appalled by the lies my son and daughter-in-law are spreading about my granddaughter, Kenya. She has not manipulated me or tried to turn me against anyone. She's a kind, loving young woman who deserves better than this treatment. Grandma detailed the events that led to the cancellation of the initial wedding plans, emphasizing how my parents had favored my brother repeatedly. By the time she concluded, tears were streaming down my face. I love both my grandchildren, Grandma stated, her eyes reflecting both strength and sadness. But it's time the truth is known. Charles and I, bolstered by Grandma's fearless defense, felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, surrounded by those who truly supported us, we were determined to move forward and celebrate our love, no matter the obstacles. As we released Grandma Lakeland's video that night, the online reactions poured in rapidly. Within hours, it amassed hundreds of comments and shares, sparking a fierce family debate. Cousin Sarah expressed her support, confident in my innocence, while great-aunt criticized my dad for his leniency with my brother. Uncle Mason bluntly rebuked my parents. Lincoln, Linda, this is low. Real low.
You need to make this right.
Yet, for every comment backing us, others were defending my parents, splitting our family right down the middle. Observing the virtual battle unfold on my screen left me with mixed emotions. While it felt validating to have the truth out there, it was heart-wrenching to see my family divided over our ordeal. The following day, an unexpected call came from Uncle Ryan, my mom's brother. I hesitated to answer, anticipating more family drama, but his voice was unexpectedly warm. Kenya, it's Uncle Ryan. I saw the video, and I had no idea things were this bad, he said. The kindness in his tone eased some of the tension I'd been holding. After a brief pause, he continued, Listen, kiddo, I know I'm probably the last person you'd expect to hear from right now, but I want you to know I'm on your side. And if your dad's not coming to the wedding, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle if you'd like. Tears welled up as I gratefully accepted his offer. Our conversation ended with plans to catch up further, leaving me feeling more buoyant than I had in weeks. Perhaps, I thought, things were finally starting to look up. As Charles and I finalized the guest list, I took a deep breath and crossed out the names of my parents and Daniel. It was a tough decision, but necessary. When we shared this update with Charles's parents, his mom embraced me tightly, saying, You're family now, Kenya. We've got your back. The wedding day arrived sooner than expected, and we opted for a smaller, more intimate ceremony. Standing in the bridal suite with Grandma Lakeland adjusting my veil, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. The ceremony was everything I could have hoped for. Uncle Ryan walked me down the aisle, pride evident in his smile, and Charles's expression as he saw me was unforgettable, a look of pure love and joy. We exchanged vows and rings, and just like that, we were married. The reception was a beautiful celebration with those who genuinely cared for us. We danced, laughed, and reveled in the love not only between Charles and me, but also in the supportive bonds of our chosen family. As the evening began to wind down, Grandma Lakeland clinked her glass to capture everyone's attention. Standing slightly shaky but with a clear, strong voice, she announced, "I have something to say. Kenya, you've shown incredible strength and grace through all of this. You're the granddaughter I always dreamed of having. So I want everyone here to know that I've decided to make Kenya my sole heir. It's not much, but it's my way of showing her how proud I am." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Overwhelmed and moved to tears, I Lakeland to hug Grandma tightly. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling the full weight of her love and support. Charles squeezed my hand, his grin wide, as we celebrated the start of our new life together, surrounded by true family. With emotion thick in my voice, I whispered to Grandma Lakeland, "I love you so much." She smiled gently, patting my cheek, and replied, "I love you too, dear. Now go on, enjoy your party. It's your day." As I scanned the room, taking in the joyful faces of Charles, his parents, Uncle Ryan, and all the friends and family who had supported me, I was enveloped in a profound sense of peace. This was my family now, imperfect, perhaps, but real and filled with love. The euphoria of our wedding lasted about a week before turmoil erupted again. Charles and I were cozy on the couch, reliving the day through our wedding photos when my phone began buzzing incessantly with notifications. Confused, I checked Facebook, only to find it besieged by furious posts from my parents. "How dare you turn my mother against me?" my dad's post screamed. My mom's message was even harsher. "You manipulative little witch. You've stolen our inheritance." My stomach churned with nausea. Before I could process everything, Grandma Lakeland called. "Don't you worry about a thing, dear," she assured me before I could even greet her. True to her word, she took charge. The following day, my dad called, his tone weary and defeated. "Kenya," he said, "your grandmother is threatening to take us to court. She claims she has evidence of harassment. Tell her not to do anything rash." I took a moment to enjoy the reversal of fortune before replying, "I think you should tell her that yourself, Dad. And while you're at it, maybe apologize for all the trouble you've caused." Hanging up, I felt a significant weight lift from my shoulders. It was over, finally, truly over. In the months that followed, Charles and I embraced our new life together, discovering our routines and the small quirks of married life. Every Sunday, we had dinner with Grandma Lakeland, sharing our week's stories and listening to tales of her youth. "Did I ever tell you about the time I snuck out to see Elvis in concert?" she asked one evening, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Charles and I grinned at each other, eager to hear more. "No, Grandma," I said, leaning forward.
Do tell.
Life wasn't perfect, of course. We had our share of mundane disputes over chores and the usual stresses of daily life, but knowing I had a family that truly loved and supported me made everything manageable. We spent holidays with Uncle Ryan and his family, slowly mending and strengthening those ties. It was different now, but somehow more authentic and sincere. As for my parents and Daniel, karma seemed to catch up with them. Despite all the resources poured into Daniel's grand romantic gesture, Harley had moved on, leaving the state to escape the drama. Daniel found himself job-hopping after losing a prestigious position, still living at home under our parents' coddling. They continued to treat him as the golden child, but now without Grandma Lakeland's financial safety net. Part of me felt sorrow for them. They had lost so much. Their daughter, their mother, their dignity, all because they couldn't look beyond their favoritism. But a larger part of me felt liberated. I was free from the burden of living up to their impossible standards and competing for their affection. I didn't know what the future held. Perhaps one day my parents would see the error of their ways, or perhaps they wouldn't. But one thing was certain. Whatever came next, I had the strength and support to face it confidently.
"You didn't need it anyway," my father said, his voice casual through my phone speaker. As if he hadn't just admitted to stealing my entire college fund. The blue glow of the screen illuminated my face in the darkened room. As my stomach dropped to the floor. Besides, what's done is done. No point getting upset about it now. My name is Eliza Kincaid. At 25, I stood in my tiny London apartment. The walls closing in around me as my father explained why he'd emptied the account. That was meant to fund my final year of college. My heart pounded against my ribs. While I gripped the phone tighter. The fund I'd built through scholarships, part-time jobs, and careful savings since high school, every dollar tracked in my meticulous spreadsheets. Every extra shift I'd worked during holidays. How much is left? I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking so badly. I had to press them against the cool window pane to steady myself. Left? None of it's left, honey, he laughed as if we were discussing something trivial. Like a missed lunch date. I had some debts to clear up. But don't worry, you're smart. You'll figure something out. Figure something out? My throat tightened with rage. Like I had a choice? Like he hadn't just stolen 4 years of my hard work while I was studying abroad. Unable to stop him because he'd remained a cosigner on the account I'd opened at 17. The betrayal burned hot in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I see, I said quietly, digging my fingernails into my palm to maintain control. Well, good luck with that. That's my girl, he replied, mistaking my calm for acceptance. The pride in his voice making me nauseous. Always practical, just like your old dad. Listen, I've got to run. Meeting some friends for drinks. We'll talk soon. Meeting friends for drinks. With my money. My future. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Fighting back the scream building in my throat. I sat down at my small desk overlooking the London street I'd fallen in love with during my semester abroad, watching pedestrians go about their normal lives. While mine had just imploded. 3 months left until I had to return home. 3 months to figure out how to salvage my senior year after my own father had pulled the rug out from under me. The panic rose like a tide, threatening to drown me. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from him. Don't mention this to your mom or grandmother. No need to worry them. Of course he didn't want them to know. Just like he hadn't wanted them to know. About his gambling debts, his failed business ventures, his habit of borrowing money. He never repaid. The familiar sick feeling of being manipulated washed over me again. I opened my laptop and started a list, the soft click of the keys a steady rhythm. In the silent apartment. First, documentation, bank statements showing the account's history. Proof of my deposits, records of the scholarships I'd earned. Then research, legal resources. Financial aid options, potential part-time jobs. Each item I typed was a small act of defiance. My father had always underestimated me, treated me like his backup plan. Good thing you're pretty, he'd say when I brought home straight A's. His words cutting deeper than he realized, dismissing years of late-night studying. And determination. You can always marry rich if college doesn't work out. The memory still stung, making my cheeks burn with humiliation. But I hadn't worked this hard, come this far, to let him derail my future. He thought I was being practical when I calmly accepted his theft. He had no idea that practical was exactly what he should fear. A cold determination settled over me as I organized my digital files with military precision. Over the next week, I pieced together the extent of his betrayal. The account had held just over $42,000, money I'd earned through academic scholarships, summer jobs, and careful budgeting. My father had drained the account through a series of transfers over the past month, each one small enough to slip under the radar. My heart sank with each transaction I documented, the numbers blurring through my tears. My roommate Zoe found me surrounded by bank statements one evening. My normally tidy desk transformed into a paper battlefield. "Your father did what?" she exclaimed, her eyes widening in shock as she read over my shoulder. Can't you report him for theft? Her outrage on my behalf felt like the first genuine human connection I'd had since the phone call. The account still had his name on it, I explained, my voice hollow with defeat. Legally, he had every right to access it. I just never thought he'd actually do this. I pressed my palms against my eyes, fighting back tears. I should have known better, should have remembered how he'd borrowed my birthday money throughout my childhood, always promising to pay it back, but never doing so. The memory of my 8th birthday crashed over me, the $20 from my grandmother vanishing from my unicorn piggy bank. How he tried to convince me to take out extra student loans in my name, claiming he'd help me repay them, his smooth voice making it sound reasonable. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him. Don't stress about the money. You worry too much. Maybe this is a sign you should take a break from school. I know some guys who could get you a modeling job. Better money than that degree. Each notification made me flinch. Each message revealed more about how little he valued my education, my independence, my future. To him, I was just another resource to exploit, another safety net for his poor choices. The realization made me feel hollow, as if something fundamental had been stolen beyond just the money. I started making calls to my university's financial aid office, to legal aid services, to my grandmother who'd always supported my academic dreams. The phone felt heavy in my hands, each call harder to make than the last. I didn't tell them everything yet, just gathered information, assessed my options. My voice shaking despite my efforts to sound composed. My father's next call came while I was in class, the familiar ringtone making my classmates turn to stare. Hey princess, quick question. His voice oozed charm through the speaker. As I stepped into the hallway, my heart racing. You wouldn't happen to have any other savings accounts, would you? Just wondering, since you're always so good with money. The casual entitlement in his voice made my blood boil, heat rising up my neck. I kept my tone light, though my knuckles were white around the phone. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. Just thinking about your future, you know. How dads are. I could hear ice clinking in a glass on his end of the line. Thinking about my future? My jaw clenched painfully. Like he had when he drained my college fund? Like he had when he tried to discourage me from studying abroad, claiming I was running away from family obligations? The familiar manipulation made my skin crawl. Sorry, Dad. In class now. Talk later. The words tasted bitter. I hung up and opened my laptop, adding another item to my growing list. Close any remaining accounts he might know about. Transfer everything to new accounts. At a different bank. The rhythm of my typing became more aggressive, matching my rising anger. That evening, I received an email from my grandmother. Called your father today. He seemed nervous when I asked about your college fund. Is everything okay? My hands trembled as I read her words. I smiled for the first time in days, imagining his discomfort. A small spark of satisfaction warming my chest. He'd always been afraid of my grandmother, the only person who'd ever successfully held him accountable. Her sharp mind and sharper tongue cutting through his excuses. Can we talk? I wrote back, my heart pounding as I hit send. There's something you should know. My grandmother's response was immediate and fierce. The moment she heard the full story, she called an emergency family meeting without my father present, her normally calm voice vibrating with anger. That man, she fumed over our video call, my mother and aunt sitting beside her. Their faces pale with shock. He's gone too far this time. Stealing from his own daughter. Her hands clenched into fists, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her righteous fury. I watched their faces as I shared the bank statements, the text messages, the casual way he'd dismissed my future. Each revelation landing like a physical blow. My mother's hands trembled as she read his messages, tears streaming down her cheeks. I had no idea, she whispered, her voice breaking. He told me you decided to take a break. From school, that you were thinking about moving back home. The pain in her eyes mirrored my own. Of course he had. My father had always been skilled at spinning narratives that suited his needs, weaving webs of half-truths and outright lies. How many times had he reinterpreted my achievements to make them about him? How often had he taken credit for my success, while secretly undermining it? The pattern was so clear now that I felt stupid for not seeing it earlier. I've been documenting everything, I told them, straightening my shoulders. Every withdrawal, every message, every call. I'm not letting him get away with this. The determination in my voice surprised even me. My aunt, a lawyer, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing with professional interest. The account issue is tricky since he was a co-signer, but there might be other angles we can pursue. Has he made any promises in writing about repaying the money? Her practical approach gave me hope. I pulled up more screenshots, emails where he'd acknowledged the money was for my education, texts where he'd casually mentioned paying me back someday. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up evidence I'd meticulously catalogued. Perfect, my aunt said, a predatory smile spreading across her face. Not legally binding, but excellent leverage for what comes next. The confidence in her voice was contagious. What comes next? My mother asked, wiping away tears, her voice stronger now. Next, my grandmother declared, her eyes flashing with a determination I'd inherited. We make Walter realize exactly what he's done and whom he's done it to. The steel in her voice made me sit up straighter, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. For the first time since that terrible phone call, the plan came together quickly, a digital war council forming across 3 time zones. My grandmother would confront him first, making it clear that the family knew what he had done. My aunt would draft a formal demand letter laying out his options for making restitution. And my mother would finally file for the divorce she'd been hesitating over for years. He's always underestimated you, my grandmother said, her face fierce even through the pixelated video call, her silver hair gleaming in the lamplight. He's treated you like an extension of himself instead of your own person. Time to show him who you really are. Her words sent a surge of strength through me that I desperately needed. That night, my father called again, the familiar ringtone making my stomach clench with dread. Your grandmother seemed upset today, he said carefully, his voice unnaturally controlled. You didn't tell her anything, did you? Beneath the forced calm, I could hear the flicker of panic. About what, Dad? I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I paced my small kitchen. The college fund you stole? The future you tried to derail? Or just your general belief that your daughter's education means nothing compared to your bar tab? My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Silence on his end, then, now, princess. His condescending tone made my skin crawl. Don't call me princess, I snapped, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Don't call me at all. Everything goes through Aunt Julia from now on. The words felt like breaking chains. Julia? Why would your aunt need to be involved? His voice rose with indignation, making him sound like a petulant child caught stealing cookies. Because she's a lawyer, Dad. And you're about to need one too. I felt a fierce pride as I spoke the words I'd rehearsed in my head for days. My father's reaction was predictable, first denial, his voice incredulous. As if I was the unreasonable one, then anger, shouting about family loyalty until I had to hold the phone away from my ear, finally desperate attempts at manipulation. His tone shifting to wounded and betrayed. You're blowing this out of proportion, he texted an hour later, the notification making me jump. It was just money. Family is more important than money. The hypocrisy made me laugh out loud. A harsh sound in my empty apartment. I forwarded each message to my aunt without responding, my finger jabbing vindicatively at the forward button. Let him dig his hole deeper. Each message was another nail in the coffin of his deception. His next move was to show up at my grandmother's house, where I was staying until my return flight to London. I watched through the living room window. As he strode up the walkway, his expensive leather shoes gleaming. His face arranged in an expression of fatherly concern. She didn't let him past the front porch, her small frame standing firm in the doorway like a fortress. "How dare you?" she demanded, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, her voice carrying across the manicured lawns. "Stealing your daughter's college fund. Have you no shame?" The color drained from my father's face as heads turned from nearby houses. "Mother, please," he tried to lower his voice, glancing nervously at the neighbors. "This is a family matter." His smile was tight and strained, stretched across his face like plastic. "Exactly. And you've betrayed your family," she shot back, jabbing a finger at his chest. "Now leave before I call the police." The steel in her voice made me stand straighter, even watching from inside. He left, tires squealing as he pulled away, but the texts continued, buzzing through my phone like angry hornets. "Your grandmother's turned you against me. I'm your father. You owe me respect after everything I've done for you." Reading his words made my throat tighten with rage. I thought about everything he'd actually done for me, how he'd tried to discourage my academic achievements, belittling my mathematics awards, how he'd borrowed my childhood savings, leaving my piggy bank empty when I wanted to buy books. How he'd treated my success as something he could cash in on whenever he needed, as if I was his personal investment rather than his daughter. Each memory fueled my determination. My aunt's demand letter arrived at his house via certified mail, the tracking notification pinging my phone. Inside was a detailed accounting of every penny he'd taken, along with options for repayment. I imagined him opening it, his face growing redder with each page. "You can't sue your own father," he called 20 minutes after the delivery confirmation, his voice a mix of disbelief and outrage that made my skin crawl. "Watch me," I replied, a cold satisfaction flowing through me as I pressed the end call button. The silence afterward felt like a victory. The family fallout was spectacular, a tsunami of revelations washing away decades of enabling behavior. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years called to express their disgust, their voices filled with a mixture of sympathy for me and anger at him. His sister, my Aunt Carolyn, shared stories of how he'd borrowed money from her children's birthday cards too, her voice tight with long-suppressed anger. "He's always been like this," she said, as we sat in my grandmother's kitchen sharing coffee. And revelations. Taking what isn't his, expecting everyone to forgive him because he's family. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, decades of frustration finding release. My mother finally filed for divorce, citing financial infidelity among other reasons, her shoulders straightening as if a weight had been lifted. During their first hearing, his pattern of stealing from me came to light. My carefully documented evidence projected on a screen for all to see. "You emptied your daughter's college fund to pay gambling debts?" the judge asked incredulously, peering over her glasses at my father, who squirmed in his expensive suit. The air in the courtroom felt thick and suffocating as I waited for his response. "I was going to pay it back," he protested weakly, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially me sitting rigid in the gallery. "With what money? According to these statements, you haven't held a steady job in 3 years." The judge's tone left no room for excuses, and from the murmurs in the courtroom, it was clear no one else was buying them either. His carefully constructed image of the fun-loving, generous father was crumbling before my eyes, like watching a building demolition in slow motion. Every attempt to defend himself just revealed more of his true nature, each excuse more transparent than the last. The university's financial aid office proved surprisingly helpful once they understood the situation. The directors faced softening with genuine concern as I explained my circumstances. They helped me secure emergency funding and worked out a payment plan for my final year, each signature on the forms feeling like reclaiming a piece of my future. My grandmother insisted on covering what she could, though I was hesitant to accept the memory of my father's exploitation making me wary of any financial help. "Unlike your father," she said firmly, pressing the check into my hand while we sat at her kitchen table, the afternoon sun streaming through lace curtains. I understand the value of education and of keeping promises. The warmth in her eyes made my throat tight with emotion. My father's response to the demand letter was to claim poverty, insisting he had no way to repay what he'd stolen, his voice breaking on our rare phone calls, as if he was the victim. Then my aunt discovered his new car purchase. The vacation photos he'd posted on social media of a Bahamas resort. The country club membership he somehow still maintained despite his supposed destitution. He's not broke, she explained, spreading printouts across her dining room table, her finger tracing his digital trail of excess. He's just good at hiding assets. But not good enough. The predatory smile on her face reminded me that I wasn't fighting alone. His text messages grew increasingly desperate, the notification sound making me wince each time. You're ruining my life. My own daughter turning against me like this. I raised you better than this. Each accusation felt like a knife, but one that cut through the last of my doubts rather than wounding me. Each message stripped away another layer of his facade. The loving father act falling apart to reveal the manipulator beneath. Like watching a mask slip to expose the real face underneath. I saved them all, evidence of who he really was. The final straw came when he tried to turn my younger cousins against me, telling them I was trying to bankrupt him out of spite, his voice honeyed with fake concern. Instead, they shared screenshots of his messages, adding to my growing file of evidence. Their loyalty a gift I hadn't expected. Remember when Uncle Walter told us our college funds were safe with him? My cousin Mason wrote in our family group chat. Guess we know what that meant. The dark humor masked real fear that made me even more determined to expose my father's patterns. My aunt helped them secure their own accounts before he could strike again, guiding them through the process of removing his access to their funds. His pattern of financial abuse was finally being exposed, one family member at a time. Like turning on lights in a darkened house to reveal hidden dangers. During my mother's divorce proceedings, more revelations surfaced that made my blood run cold. He'd been hiding money for years, taking out loans in her name, even trying to remortgage their house without her knowledge. The pattern was so clear now I wondered how we'd all missed it for so long. He's been treating the whole family like his personal ATM. My mother realized as we sorted through financial documents in the lawyer's office, her voice hollow with dawning comprehension. And we all just kept making excuses for him. The pain in her eyes mirrored my own, a shared grief for years of manipulation. My grandmother arranged a family meeting, again without him present. The living room crowded with relatives I hadn't seen together in years. Relatives shared stories of loans never repaid, promises broken, trust betrayed. Each testimony more damning than the last. Each story strengthened our resolve to hold him accountable, faces growing harder with determination as the evening progressed. He's always counted on family loyalty to shield him from consequences, my aunt observed, standing by the fireplace like a prosecutor delivering closing arguments. Time to show him that loyalty goes both ways. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. The consequences hit my father like dominoes falling, each impact visible in his increasingly haggard appearance. First, my mother's divorce attorney uncovered his hidden accounts, leading to a much larger settlement than he'd anticipated, his face ashen as the ruling was read. Then my aunt's legal pressure forced him to agree to a repayment plan for my stolen funds, with interest, the pen shaking in his hand as he signed the documents. His careful facade of the generous, fun-loving dad crumbled completely when the family learned he'd been borrowing money from elderly relatives, promising returns on investments that never materialized. The disgust on my uncle's face, as he described his mother's lost retirement savings, made me physically ill. A regular Ponzi scheme, my aunt muttered, adding these discoveries to her growing file. Her expression grim as she documented yet another betrayal. The weight of evidence was crushing. His text messages shifted from angry to pleading, desperation seeping through each word. I'm still your father. We can work this out. Everyone makes mistakes. Why can't you forgive me? What will people think of you treating your dad this way? Reading them made my stomach churn. With familiar guilt before I reminded myself of what he'd done. I thought about all the times he'd used guilt to control me. How he twisted every situation to make himself the victim. The emotional whiplash leaving me constantly off balance. Not anymore. I deleted his messages without responding. Each unread notification a small declaration of independence. Through my grandmother's connections, I secured a part-time job at a financial consultancy. That allowed me to complete my degree while working, the irony not lost on me. My professors, understanding my situation, helped me arrange a flexible schedule that accommodated my new responsibilities. Every small victory felt like a step further. From his influence, each accomplishment a brick in the wall between us. The family's support took me by surprise, warming me from the inside like a sip of good whiskey. My cousins shared their own stories of his financial manipulation, aunts and uncles, who had once excused his behavior, now stood firmly against him, united in their resolve to protect the younger generation. Even distant relatives reached out to offer encouragement, their messages filling my inbox with unexpected solidarity. "Your father called," my grandmother told me one evening as we shared tea in her kitchen. Moonlight spilling across the worn wooden table. "Trying to convince me to talk you out of the repayment plan. Said it was tearing the family apart." Her eyes were steady as she waited for my reaction. "What did you tell him?" I asked, my voice stronger than I expected. Steam from the teacup warming my face. That he destroyed it himself when he stole from his own daughter. Her matter-of-fact delivery made me smile for the first time in days. A real smile that reached my eyes. His last attempt at manipulation was to show up at my graduation uninvited, unwelcome, but determined to play the role of proud father. I spotted him in the crowd. His fake smile and new suit a transparent attempt to save face. My stomach dropping at the sight of him. "That's my girl," he announced loudly to anyone who would listen, clapping a stranger on the shoulder. "Gets her business sense from me." His voice carried across the gathering, making heads turn, as he tried to insert himself into my moment. My Aunt Julia had him escorted out before the ceremony began. A whispered exchange with security led to his humiliating exit, his protests fading as he was ushered from the auditorium. The relief I felt watching him go was overwhelming. "Your success belongs to you," she told me afterward, straightening my graduation cap. With gentle hands, her eyes fierce with pride. "He doesn't get to claim credit for what he tried to prevent." Her words settled into my heart, a truth I would carry forward. A year after the confrontation over my stolen college fund, my father's carefully constructed world had completely unraveled like a cheap sweater caught on a nail. The divorce had exposed his financial schemes to everyone. The court documents becoming the talk of his social circle. Former friends who'd invested in his business ventures were demanding answers with increasing hostility. Relatives he'd borrowed from were taking legal action, their patience finally exhausted after years of broken promises. My graduation party, hosted by my grandmother in her sunlit backyard, became a celebration not just of my academic achievement but of my independence. The pride in her eyes brought tears to mine as friends and family gathered to support me, many of them sharing their own stories of standing up to manipulative parents over champagne and cake. The atmosphere buzzed with vindication and new beginnings. "Your father called me yesterday," my mother said during the party, twisting her new engagement ring nervously as we stood by the dessert table. "Wanted to know if I'd talk to you about dropping the repayment plan. Said he's learned his lesson." Her eyes searched mine for a reaction. "Has he?" I asked, pulling out my phone to show her his latest social media posts, photos of him at an expensive resort, a new designer watch visible on his wrist, still showing him living beyond his means, still pretending everything was fine. The familiar knot of frustration tightened in my stomach. No, she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. He's learned he can't manipulate you anymore. That's not the same thing. The wisdom in her words struck me, she'd finally seen through him too. The repayment plan my aunt had arranged was strict, monthly payments directly from his paycheck, no excuses accepted, each transaction documented with clinical precision. He'd finally had to get a real job when his schemes dried up. His previous lifestyle impossible to maintain now that no one would lend him money. The thought of him working 9 to 5 like a regular person gave me a satisfaction I didn't bother to hide. It's not fair, he'd complained in his last email, the subject line reading, "Please read this. I'm your father. You're supposed to love me unconditionally." His words made my jaw clench with familiar anger. "Love isn't a blank check," I'd replied, my fingers typing with decisive clicks. My last direct communication with him, and conditions are what happen when you break trust. Hitting send felt like closing a door. My career was soaring, far beyond even my most ambitious expectations. I'd secured a position with a top financial firm in London. My degree and determination opening doors I'd once thought closed. Each success felt sweeter for having been earned entirely on my own terms. Each achievement a testament to what he couldn't take from me. My grandmother had become my strongest ally, her fierce protection a stark contrast to my father's self-serving love. Our Sunday video calls became the highlight of my week. Her wisdom guiding me through my new independence. He called again, she told me over Sunday dinner during one of my visits home. Her famous pot roast steaming between us. Wanted to know if you'd gotten that job in London. Said he'd love to visit once you're settled. Her eyes twinkled with mischief as she waited for my reaction. To visit or to ask for money? I asked, already knowing the answer. The familiar weight of his predictability settling in my chest. Both, probably, she chuckled, slicing through her roast beef with decisive strokes. I told him you're done funding his lifestyle. The satisfaction in her voice matched my own feelings exactly. The family dynamics had shifted permanently, like tectonic plates reshaping the landscape. Relatives who'd once enabled his behavior now shared warnings about his latest schemes. In our family group chat, his sister, my Aunt Carolyn, had started a separate family thread specifically to track his attempts at manipulation. Calling it Walter Watch with grim humor. He tried to convince Mason to co-sign a car loan, she reported one day. Her message appearing on my phone during lunch. Told him it would help build his credit. Sound familiar? The notification made me choke on my sandwich. It did. He'd tried the same tactic with me at 18, his voice smooth as butter as he pushed the papers across the table, attempting to saddle me with debt before I'd even started college. Back then, my grandmother had intercepted the paperwork and warned me about predatory practices, including those from family members. The memory still made my stomach turn. Now, watching his world shrink as mine expanded, I felt not victory but validation. A quiet certainty settling in my bones. Every payment he made, forced by legal pressure rather than paternal responsibility, proved what I'd always known, he was capable of doing the right thing. He just never thought he had to. The realization was both sad and liberating. My success had become a form of protection, a shield against future exploitation. The more I achieved, the less power he had to affect my future. The degree he tried to derail now hung on my wall in a sleek black frame. Each accomplishment a reminder that his greatest mistake wasn't stealing my money. It was underestimating my resolve. I touch the frame sometimes, grounding myself in how far I'd come. My return to London marked a new chapter, the city's energy matching my own renewed sense of purpose. The firm had offered me not just a job but a future I'd built despite my father's attempts to derail it. My small flat in the city, with its view of the Thames and morning sunlight streaming through tall windows, became a symbol of independence, paid for with my own money, decorated with my own taste. Free from any influence he might try to claim. I'd never slept better than I did there. His attempts to maintain contact became increasingly transparent, each one more desperate than the last. First came the birthday card, the first he'd sent in years, with a carefully crafted message about how proud he was of my achievements. The sight of his handwriting made my hand tremble slightly as I opened it. "Did you see how he signed it?" my mother asked over the phone, her voice incredulous. "Love, Dad, your biggest supporter." The audacity of that man. We laughed together. The shared joke healing old wounds. Then came the social media posts, tagging me in old family photos with captions about how he'd always encouraged my dreams. Each post carefully curated to paint himself as the devoted father who'd sacrificed everything for his daughter's success. I blocked him on every platform, the click of each button feeling like setting down a heavy weight. My Aunt Julia helped me draft a cease and desist letter when the posts escalated to claims about his investment in my education, his lawyer face on as we worked on the wording together over a video call. "He's trying to rewrite history," she explained, her glasses reflecting her computer screen. "Make sure there's a paper trail proving otherwise." Her methodical approach reminded me of where I got my own attention to detail. His response was predictable: more attempts at manipulation, more claims of family loyalty, more hints about his financial struggles. But his words had lost their power to hurt me, like a spell that no longer worked once you knew the trick behind it. Through family gossip, I heard about his latest schemes with a mixture of disgust and pity. He'd started telling people he had connections in London, suggesting he could help their children find opportunities abroad, each attempt to profit from my success backfiring when they contacted me to verify his claims. His desperation was becoming more obvious to everyone. "Your father says you're hiring at your firm," one family friend wrote in an email. That made me spill my morning coffee. He offered to put in a good word for my daughter. For a small consulting fee, of course. The sheer nerve still had the power to shock me. I wrote back explaining that my father had no connection to my firm, no influence over hiring, and no right to charge fees for false promises. Each response felt like another brick in the wall between his lies and my truth, mortared with the strength I'd built in standing up to him. My grandmother visited me in London, for the first time at 72, her excitement making her seem decades younger as we explored the city together. Seeing my life through her eyes, the career I'd built, the home I'd made, the future I'd secured, brought everything full circle. Her pride was palpable as she met my colleagues and saw my office. "You know what makes me proudest," she said over dinner at my favorite local pub, candlelight catching in her silver hair as she leaned across the table. "Not just what you've achieved, but how you've achieved it. You didn't let him turn you bitter. You just got stronger." Her words settled in my heart like a blessing. That evening, I received another text from him, the notification making my heart skip. "Heard Mom's visiting. The flat must be cramped. I know some great hotels if you need help with the expense." The familiar pattern of offer with strings attached made me shake my head in disbelief. I showed my grandmother the message, and we both laughed until tears welled up. In our eyes, the same old tactics, transparent as glass after seeing them for what they were. The relief of being immune to his manipulation felt like flying. Should I respond? I asked, though I already knew the answer, my finger hovering over the screen. "Darling," she said, raising her glass of red wine, her eyes twinkling with mischief and wisdom. "Your success is all the response he needs." We clinked glasses in celebration of lessons learned and battles won. 2 years after the confrontation over my stolen college fund, my father's repayment plan was still in force, each monthly payment a reminder of his accountability. The notifications from my bank app became a small monthly victory. He'd tried various schemes to reduce or delay the payments, each attempt more creative than the last, but my aunt's legal oversight remained firm, her attention to detail matching his determination to wriggle out of responsibility. During a family gathering back home, my cousin Mason shared his own victory. He'd graduated debt-free, his college fund secured in an account my father couldn't access. His pride was contagious as we celebrated with homemade ice cream on my grandmother's porch. You know what Uncle Walter said when I told him? Mason laughed, nearly choking on his dessert. That I should thank you for overreacting about your fund. Said your dramatic response helped him learn an important lesson. The absurdity made us both burst out laughing. Did he learn, though? I asked, thinking of his latest attempts to convince relatives to invest in his new business venture, supposedly a foolproof cryptocurrency opportunity. My skepticism had become a family trait. He learned not to target family members with good lawyers, my Aunt Julia interjected, joining us on the porch with her own bowl of ice cream. That's about it. Her dry delivery made us all burst into laughter again. My career continued to flourish beyond my wildest expectations. The firm had promoted me to a senior position, my reputation built on the same attention to detail and determination that had helped me overcome my father's betrayal. Each successful project felt like another step away from his shadow. His Christmas card arrived at my London flat, thick with forced cheerfulness and hints about his financial struggles, the envelope covered in an excessive number of holiday stickers. Inside, he'd written in his unmistakable handwriting, "Still paying for one mistake. When will you let it go?" The passive-aggressive note made my jaw clench. I pinned it to my bulletin board next to my degree and latest promotion letter, reminders that his one mistake had failed to define my future. His signature at the bottom, once a symbol of paternal authority, now looked exactly like what it was. The mark of a man who'd bet against his daughter's strength and lost. The contrast gave me a grim satisfaction. At my firm's annual charity gala, I was asked to speak about persistence and overcoming obstacles, the spotlight making my palms sweat as I approached the podium. I didn't mention my father directly, but I talked about the moment. I'd learned my college fund was gone, not as a story of betrayal, but as a lesson in self-reliance. The audience hung on every word. Sometimes, I told the audience, my voice growing stronger with each word, the people who should support you the most become the obstacles you need to overcome. Their underestimation becomes your motivation. The applause that followed warmed me from the inside out. My father saw the speech online, someone had shared it in the family group chat he'd been excluded from. His response came through my grandmother, predictable as the tides. She's still angry, using my mistake to get attention. The familiar accusation of emotional manipulation made me roll my eyes. No, my grandmother had replied with characteristic directness. She's successful, using her strength to help others. There's a difference. Her defense made me tear up when she told me about it during our weekly call. The last payment from my father arrived on a Tuesday, the final installment of the money he'd stolen. The notification on my phone made me stop in the middle of a crowded London street. A wave of complex emotions washing over me. He'd attached a note to the electronic transfer. Now can we be family again? The audacity still had the power to take my breath away. I filed the receipt with all my other documentation, the bank statements, the demanding texts, the social media posts where he'd tried to rewrite history, not because I needed them anymore, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. The folder would remain closed, but not forgotten. My mother, now happily remarried to a kind history professor, summed it up perfectly during our last video call. He thought taking your money would keep you dependent on him. Instead, it set you free. The contentment in her face as she spoke from her sunny new kitchen said as much as her words. She was right, I realized as I stood on my balcony that evening, watching the lights of London flicker to life as dusk fell. Every attempt he'd made to hold me back had pushed me forward instead. Like trying to dam a river only to increase its force. His greatest punishment wasn't the repayment plan or the family's disapproval. It was watching me succeed without him. Beyond him, despite him. As the city lights reflected in the Thames below, I finally felt the last chains of his influence fall away, leaving nothing but open sky ahead.
Allow me to share my story of growing up often overlooked, hidden in the shadow of my elder sister. My name is Etta, and my sister Teresa, 3 years my senior, seemed to bask in the spotlight of our parents' attention. It was as though she was an only child. Every new purchase, whether the latest phone, trendy shoes, or a high-tech laptop, first belonged to Teresa. When she upgraded, her old possessions became mine. Our family wasn't struggling financially. It just seemed that my needs were an afterthought to my parents. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was the one person who noticed the disparity. Each visit, she would scrutinize my hand-me-downs with a look of displeasure, as if she had bitten into something bitter. In those moments, she would discreetly slip me an envelope with money. Buy something special for yourself, she'd insist. Something that's truly yours. My grandmother wasn't just wealthy, she was also genuinely attentive. Unlike my parents, she took an interest in my life, asking about school, my friends, and my hobbies. Those everyday things that parents typically inquire about but mine overlooked. By the time I was 16, my patience had worn thin. I was tired of being invisible in my own home, of always wearing Teresa's discarded clothes, of feeling like a ghost within the family. Determined to carve out my path, I secured a job at a local cafe. It was humble work, taking orders, manning the register, and cleaning up. But every dollar I earned was empowering. It was mine, untainted by the shadow of hand-me-downs. Working for myself had its unexpected rewards. I found satisfaction in earning my keep, in knowing that the things I bought were truly mine, without the lingering sense of indebtedness to Teresa's leftovers. My grandmother understood this shift in me. She would often visit the cafe, watching me with pride as she sipped her coffee, seeing me thrive on my terms. Teresa's 19th birthday marked a grand celebration of her passage into adulthood. My parents spared no expense, securing a lavish venue, gourmet caterers, and inviting a throng of relatives. I spent the morning setting up, watching as my mother painstakingly arranged every detail. By evening, the venue buzzed with guests, and Teresa glided among them, radiant in a brand new dress, receiving accolades like royalty at her coronation. Meanwhile, I stood on the sidelines, clad in my finest hand-me-down, trying to fade into the background. The highlight of the evening was when my father stood to toast Teresa, his face alight with pride. As he spoke, extolling her virtues and achievements, I couldn't help but feel even more like the forgotten child, overshadowed even on such a grand stage. At the height of the celebration, my father stood up with a gleam in his eyes, making everyone's attention pivot towards him. Beside him, my mother, practically radiating excitement, chimed in. As you all know, Teresa has been an outstanding student throughout her life. I nearly rolled my eyes at the familiar narrative. My father, swelling with pride, announced, "We are thrilled to let everyone know that Teresa will be attending Preston University this coming fall." The room burst into applause. Preston was the kind of elite private college where tuition alone could dwarf the cost of an average home. "We've been saving for this since she was a little girl," Dad continued, his chest puffed out. "It hasn't been easy, but we believe nothing is too good for our Teresa." It was then that Grandma stood up, her expression stern in a way I recognized all too well, the look that said she had seen enough. "That is wonderful news," she began, her voice slicing through the now muted applause. "I'm truly happy for Teresa. However, I must ask, have you also set aside a similar fund for Etta's college education?" The room fell into a palpable silence. My parents looked like they'd been caught off guard, their faces turning to their shoes. My mother stumbled over her words, her cheeks reddening. "Oh, well, there's still time. Etta hasn't finished high school yet." But Grandma cut her off. "That's not what I asked, Sandra." Trying to maintain a casual tone, my mom replied, "Well, to be honest, Etta isn't exactly college material like Teresa. Her grades aren't. She might just continue working at the cafe after she graduates." The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. I felt a sting of humiliation, but before I could react, Grandma was already pulling out my most recent report card from her purse, the one with straight A's and an A+ in chemistry. "These grades," she challenged, holding it up for all to see. These are the grades of someone who isn't college material? The ones you'd know about if you ever asked your youngest about her school? Silence engulfed the room as Grandma listed my grades. My parents' faces morphed from embarrassment to shock. "We didn't know," my dad murmured sheepishly. "Exactly." Grandma snapped back, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You don't know because you're too focused on Teresa to realize your other daughter exists." "Mom, please." My mother attempted to interject, but Grandma was relentless. "No, you need to listen," she continued. "Now tell me, why haven't you saved for Etta's education? And don't lie to me, Sandra. I raised you better than that." Under the weight of scrutiny, my dad confessed, "We used all our savings on Teresa's tuition." The collective gasp from the relatives was like a physical blow, making me wish I could vanish. But Grandma wasn't finished. "So, you've left nothing for your younger daughter," she said, shaking her head in disdain. "Well then, I will pay for Etta's college education. Every single penny. Because it seems I'm the only adult here who insists on treating these girls equally." Torn between gratitude towards my grandmother and a desire to escape the overwhelming tension, I sat frozen. Teresa, meanwhile, stared down at her cake as if it contained the answers to the universe. After the debacle at Teresa's birthday party, our home morphed into a cold, silent fortress. My parents seemed to harbor the notion that I had engineered the entire episode, manipulating Grandma to reveal their partiality. As if in response to their unspoken accusations, an icy chill settled over our interactions. That fall, Teresa left for Preston University, and with her departure, any remaining warmth in our house seemed to vanish. My parents drifted through the days like specters, barely acknowledging my presence. Occasionally, I'd catch them giving me looks that blended resentment with shame, as if I were the living reminder of their disgrace. I continued my routine, working at the cafe and maintaining strong grades, existing in the echoing quiet of our house. Time moved slowly, but eventually my high school graduation approached. I was accepted into State University, a respectable institution, though not as prestigious as Preston. It wasn't just a school to me. It was a portal to freedom. My grandmother's face lit up when I showed her the acceptance letter, her pride in stark contrast to my parents' lukewarm acknowledgement. They attended my graduation ceremony, yet they were as distant as strangers, offering nothing more than a cursory card and a generic congratulation before reverting to discussions about Teresa's achievements. College became my sanctuary. I lived in the dorms and spent breaks at Grandma's house. Occasionally, I visited my parents, maintaining a superficial connection. These visits were predictably scripted. I would sit, and they would fill the air with tales of Teresa's latest successes, her graduation with honors, her high-profile job, her relationship with Gabriel, a well-positioned financier likely to become her fiancé. I'd listen silently, my accomplishments unasked for and unspoken. During these updates, I'd offer nothing more than nods and smiles, letting their words fade into the background. Why bother sharing my own successes or dreams? They hadn't shown interest before. There was no reason to think they would now. Meanwhile, my father would glowingly add details about Gabriel's affluent family and their booming real estate business, painting a picture of a future that was seemingly perfect. In those moments, I felt my grandmother's eyes on me, her gaze filled with understanding. She knew why I remained silent, why I allowed them to orbit around Teresa without interruption. The battle for recognition had lost its appeal long ago. "How are your classes really going?" Grandma would ask once we were alone, her voice warm with genuine curiosity. I would open up about my studies, my projects, and my aspirations. She engaged with every detail, offering insights and encouragement. After graduating from State University, I secured a position at a reputable marketing firm. My hard work had finally translated into a tangible success. I had my apartment, a comfortable income, and a career trajectory that filled me with pride. As I established my independent life, the contrast between my world and the one centered around Teresa grew sharper. Yet, with Grandma's support, I navigated these two realities, cherishing the freedom to build a future on my terms. Life was progressing splendidly for me, defined by a thrilling sense of autonomy from my parents' orbit. However, when Teresa's wedding rolled around, my parents truly outdid themselves. They hosted a lavish affair at a historic mansion adorned with pristine gardens, complete with a string quartet and a gourmet four-course meal, even featuring an elaborate ice sculpture. I later discovered they had financed this grand spectacle with a $500,000 loan. Despite my internal reservations about their financial decisions, I kept my opinions to myself and focused on celebrating my sister's joyous day. Teresa was radiant, and her husband Gabriel seemed genuinely decent. A couple of years later, it was my turn to plan a wedding. Connor, my partner of 4 years, proposed, and I was ecstatic. We organized a modest engagement celebration at my favorite restaurant with our nearest and dearest, including, of course, my beloved grandmother. The evening was unfolding beautifully until Grandma rose to speak. Her eyes had that familiar, significant glint, the same one from Teresa's 19th birthday party. Addressing the room warmly, she then turned pointedly to my parents. "Sandra, Jefferson, you orchestrated such a beautiful wedding for Teresa. I trust you're planning something just as splendid for Etta." The room fell into an awkward silence. My parents squirmed under Grandma's unwavering gaze. My mother, managing a strained smile, replied, "Of course, we want both our daughters to have beautiful weddings." Trying to deflect from the tension, I quickly changed the topic, but Grandma's words lingered, altering the atmosphere. A few days later, my mom invited me over to discuss the wedding. Reluctantly, I agreed, opting to go alone despite Connor's offer to join. Over dinner, my mom eagerly asked about my vision for the wedding. I explained that Connor and I envisioned a small, intimate gathering of around 72 people, with a budget we had carefully planned at $33,000 from our savings. To my surprise, my mom looked appalled at the modest sum. "Absolutely not. That's not acceptable at all. We'll cover the wedding costs just like we did for Teresa's. Don't worry about the budget. Choose whatever you like," she insisted. I was stunned. After years of feeling like an afterthought, my parents were suddenly eager to finance a lavish wedding for me. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. For the first time, I felt recognized as a true daughter, and I cautiously allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Grandma's persistent interventions had resonated with them. The wedding day itself was a dream. It took place at a picturesque lakeside resort, with a ceremony set up near the tranquil water. Every detail, from the stunning floral arrangements to the exquisite cuisine, was perfect. The atmosphere was joyous, and it seemed everyone was having a fantastic time. As I looked around at the beautifully orchestrated scene, I hoped this marked a genuine shift in my relationship with my parents, a closing of the gap that had long defined our interactions. My parents genuinely seemed to enjoy the wedding, mingling with the guests and displaying a semblance of pride that felt authentic for once. Grandma, with a twinkle in her eyes, pulled me aside during the reception to express her happiness. "This is exactly what you deserve, sweetheart," she whispered as she embraced me warmly. "I'm so glad your parents stepped up for your special day." She even sought out my parents to thank them for hosting such a wonderful event. Leaving the reception, Connor and I were on cloud 9, ready to relish our honeymoon in Hawaii, blissfully detached from everything but each other and our new life together. However, the reality came crashing down shortly after our return. While unpacking, an email notification caught my attention. The subject line read simply, "Wedding expenses." Expecting perhaps a summary of the costs for curiosity's sake, I opened the email only to find an itemized bill totaling $165,000 attached with a note from my mom stating, "We trust you'll handle this promptly. Payment details attached." My hands trembled as disbelief turned to shock. This couldn't be real. Connor came over at the sound of my choked call. His expression shifted from confusion to outrage as he read the email. "They're billing us after insisting on paying for the wedding themselves? This must be some kind of mistake," he said, though his voice betrayed his doubt. But it was no mistake. The bill was very real, and so was their expectation for us to pay. That evening, we sat together, staring at our bank accounts, trying to grasp the implications. "We have the money," I said hollowly, referring to the savings intended for our future home. Connor suggested we speak with my parents first, hoping for some explanation, but deep down, I felt the bitter truth. There was no misunderstanding. This was just another chapter in the same old story where they built me up only to let me down, except this time, they had waited until after the wedding. With a heavy heart, I wrote the check for $165,000, watching our dreams for a home dissipate with each stroke of my pen. Sealing the envelope, I felt not just betrayal, but a stern resolve hardening within me. "I'm done," I declared to Connor as we dropped the envelope into the mailbox. "I'm done trying, done hoping. Just done." "What about your grandmother?" he asked softly, concerned. "Should we tell her?" I paused, the weight of the situation bearing down on me. "I can't," I admitted. "She was so proud at the wedding, so happy. I can't crush her with this." That night, sleep eluded me as I replayed every sign I had ignored. Their sudden generosity, their insistence on an extravagant wedding, their dismissal of my budget. I had wanted so badly to believe they had changed, and in my desire, I had walked right into their trap. Just as life began to settle into a new normal, Melanie, a family friend known for her invasive cheerfulness and inedible fruitcakes, appeared unannounced one Sunday afternoon. With a bright smile and a cake in hand, she breezed past me into the living room, her presence a stark reminder of the social facade my parents continued to maintain. "Etta, darling," she chirped, setting the tone for what I anticipated would be an awkward encounter. It had been a while since I'd seen Aunt Melanie, but as usual, she just appeared on our doorstep unannounced, claiming she was just in the neighborhood, and wanted to see how married life was treating me. Aunt Melanie, my father's sister, was the family's self-appointed news anchor, always eager to scoop up any tidbit of gossip. Her visits were rarely brief, often felt like she was there to collect stories rather than genuinely catch up. "Can I get you some coffee?" I offered, bracing myself for what I knew would be more than just a quick chat. "Oh, yes, dear. Then we can catch up properly," she responded, settling into our couch with the air of someone preparing for a lengthy stay. Once seated, she dove right in. "I haven't seen your parents in ages. How are they doing?" I busied myself at the coffee maker, delaying my response. "I wouldn't know," I finally answered. "Wouldn't know," she echoed, her pitch climbing in surprise. "What do you mean, wouldn't know? They're your parents." "I don't talk to them anymore," I said plainly, setting her coffee down in front of her. "But why?" She leaned forward, her eyes lighting up at the scent of fresh gossip. "They gave you such a beautiful wedding. Everyone's still talking about it." "I'd rather not discuss it," I stated firmly. 3 days after her visit, my phone exploded with notifications. Aunt Melanie had taken to Facebook, broadcasting her version of our conversation in a post laden with disappointment and judgment. It breaks my heart to see how ungrateful some children can be these days. "Just visited my niece who told me she's cut off contact with her parents, the same parents who just threw her a gorgeous wedding. No respect for the family anymore. Parents sacrifice everything, and this is how they're repaid. Ungrateful children. Heartbroken. Family values." The comments poured in instantly. Distant relatives, who I hadn't interacted with in years, suddenly became vocal critics of my life, labeling me ungrateful, spoiled, and disrespectful. Even those who rarely engaged with family matters were now demanding explanations, tagging me in aggressive responses. But what struck me the hardest was my mother's comment under Melanie's post. "It's true what they say, you never really know your children. Some show gratitude and appreciation for everything their parents do for them. Others, well, you can certainly tell the difference between my eldest and youngest daughters." Disappointed mother. After hours of stewing over the situation, staring at my mother's words which felt like sharp jabs to my heart, something within me snapped. "Enough," I declared aloud, startling Connor in the process. I was done being portrayed as the villain in their narrative. Trembling, I retrieved the check I had written for $165,000 from my filing cabinet, took a photo showing the amount clearly, and began drafting my own Facebook post. Since everyone seems to have an opinion about my relationship with my parents, let me share the real story. Yes, they threw me a beautiful wedding. No, I didn't ask for it. In fact, I had planned a modest celebration with a $33,000 budget, which I intended to pay for myself. They insisted on a grander affair, promising to cover the costs, just like they did for Teresa. 1 week after the wedding, they sent me this bill for $165,000, 5 times my original budget. Here's the check I had to write them, using every penny of our house down payment savings. That's why I don't talk to my parents anymore. I hit post before I could second-guess myself, attaching the photo of the check. The reaction was swift and dramatic. The same relatives who had called me ungrateful were now expressing their shock, and the tide of comments under Aunt Melanie's original post shifted. Many now called for its removal, shaken by the revelation of the full story. My phone rang just as I was setting the table for dinner. It was Grandma. I could hear the strain in her voice as she asked, "Etta, is it true what you posted about the wedding bill?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. I explained how Mom and Dad had dismissed my wishes for a simple wedding, insisted on an extravagant affair, and then slapped us with a staggering $165,000 bill right after our honeymoon. I recounted how Connor and I had to use our house down payment to cover the unexpected expense. As I spoke, there was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. When I finished, Grandma finally spoke, her voice filled with a mix of anger and resolve. "Those miserable, selfish people," she sighed. "Listen to me, Etta. You focus on taking care of yourself and Connor. I'll handle your parents." "Grandma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interjected firmly. "I've watched them treat you like a second-class citizen your entire life. But this is a new low, even for them." Her tone hardened. "Don't worry about them anymore. I'll handle it." After we hung up, I spent the next hour methodically blocking my parents on every communication platform. Phone, email, social media. I was done with their games, done with their manipulation, done with hoping they would change. A week after my social media post, I was in the middle of making dinner when I heard an aggressive knock at the door. Connor was working late, so I was alone when I opened it to find my mother, her face red with fury. "How dare you?" she shouted as she barged past me into the house. "How dare you go running to your grandmother with your lies?" I stood my ground, my voice steady. "I didn't lie about anything. You sent me a bill. I paid for it. And then I showed everyone the truth when you tried to make me look bad. You've ruined everything." She was almost hysterical now. "Your grandmother changed her will because of you. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her words were a jolt, but I kept calm. "What are you talking about?" "She's leaving almost everything to you." Mom's voice cracked. "The house, her savings, everything. Teresa gets some small amounts and your father and I get nothing. And it's all your fault." I processed this new information as my mother continued her tirade. "We had it all planned out," she ranted. "We took out a second mortgage for Teresa's wedding, but it was fine because we were going to pay it off with the inheritance. Your grandmother was supposed to split everything equally." Suddenly, it all clicked into place. "That's why you insisted on paying for my wedding," I said slowly. "You thought you'd get the money back from Grandma's inheritance anyway." "Of course, that's why. But now look what you've done. We're drowning in debt, and you've turned your grandmother against us." I couldn't help but laugh, which only fueled her anger. "Well, you just got $165,000 from me for my wedding. That should help with your debt." Mom's face flushed even darker. "We already spent that money, but that's not the point. You need to fix this. Go to your grandmother, tell her we've made up, that it was all a big misunderstanding." "No," I replied, the calmness in my voice belying the firmness of my decision. "What do you mean no?" "You owe us this." But as I looked at her, something settled over me, an unshakable resolve. "I don't owe you anything," I told her. "I'm done." This was the moment I truly freed myself from the burdens of their expectations and manipulations. As she stormed out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, knowing I had finally closed that chapter of my life for good. I firmly told my mother, "I don't owe you anything, not anymore. Your financial problems are exactly that, yours. I'm not going to lie to Grandma to help you access the money you were never entitled to in the first place." Before she could hurl another insult, I walked over to the door, opened it, and gestured for her to leave. When she hesitated, I gently but firmly pushed her out of the apartment, closed the door, and locked it. She continued to scream and pound on the door for about 15 more minutes before she finally left. The next day, Teresa called, her voice full of accusation. "How could you do this to them?" she demanded. "They gave you everything, just like they gave me. And this is how you repay them?" "They didn't give me anything, Teresa. They sent me a bill," I replied. "They're your parents. They've sacrificed so much for us." "No," I corrected her. "They sacrificed for you. I was just the backup plan for their retirement fund." Teresa called me cruel and heartless before abruptly hanging up. Just like that, I realized I had lost my sister as well. But strangely, I was okay with it. I continued to see Grandma regularly. She would come over for dinner every Sunday, and we talked almost daily over the phone. Occasionally, people would ask if I missed my family. I always told them the truth. I missed the family I wished I had, not the family that actually existed. Over time, I've learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close the door to toxic relationships, even when those relationships are with your parents. Standing up for myself had cost me my relationship with my parents and sister, but it had also freed me from a lifetime of manipulation and disappointment. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one that allowed me to live a life defined by my values and truth, surrounded by those who genuinely care and support me.